Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Fiona G.
And I'm Carrie Dunst.
President Joe Biden is en route to visit Germany and discuss the Russia-Ukraine war. Germany is set to present him with the country's highest honor.
Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris attends 3 campaign events in the battleground state of Wisconsin today.
Israel says that it has killed the leader of Hamas. He was responsible for planning the October 7th attacks. What the future of the war looks like now after his death.
North Carolina kicks off early voting as the state continues recovery efforts from Hurricane Helene. Trump and Harris are tied in the state, highlighting the importance of winning over black voters.
12 million pounds of meat and poultry have been recalled over fears that they're contaminated with listeria, some everyday products that are now included in that recall.
Once known as the face of Mexico's war on drugs, the former Secretary of Public Security in Mexico is now sentenced to spend decades in prison.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Israel says that it has killed the leader of Hamas today. Now, he was responsible for planning the October 7th attacks, among other things.
NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the latest, starting with an update on the situation in Gaza.
A Gaza health ministry official says at least 28 Palestinians are dead after an Israeli strike on a shelter. The Israeli military says the strike targeted terrorists who operated from the shelter. Israel also confirmed that it has killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. This comes after a Gaza operation which targeted 3 terrorists. Israel's military published this statement, saying Yahya Sinwar was eliminated after hiding for the past year behind the civilian population of Gaza. Shortly before the confirmation, Congressman Jared Moskowitz said this about the possibility of Sinwar being dead.
This would be a major victory for Israel and a victory for the world. Yahya Sinwar is the Osama bin Laden of his time. He is solely responsible for the attacks of October 7th.
Sinwar was the chief architect of the October 7th attacks on Israel. Here's what an analyst from the UK said about the future of the conflict after Sinwar's death.
It would very much increase the chances of a ceasefire because Israel's prime goal, declared goal, and actual goal was to take out the leadership of Hamas.
Sinwar was named the leader of Hamas after the assassination of former leader Ismail Haniyeh. Haniyeh had been killed in Tehran in August. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
We are expecting a response from the State Department and Pentagon very soon.
That's right. And now, staying on the topic of the developments in the Middle East, we are now joined live by Avi Melamed, strategic intelligence analyst and regional expert specializing in current affairs of the Arab and Muslim war and their impact on Israel and the Middle East. He is also the founder and CEO of Inside the Middle East Intelligence Perspectives. Avi, thank you for joining us today. Now, I know you're following the situation in the Middle East very closely. So what updates do you have now that the IDF has confirmed that Sinwar is dead? What does this mean?
Well, obviously, there are many ramifications. I would start with a very short term, saying that this is, of course, a very significant achievement for Israel. But I would say that not less significant in 2 major aspects. We have to remember that Sinwar, as long as he was in power in Gaza, was a major obstacle on the path of any kind of a deal to release the hostages, because Sinwar didn't have any incentive to do that. So this is one thing. The other thing is that as long as Sinwar was in power in Gaza, he was able to suffocate any kind of opposition, terrorizing others in Gaza, who basically dare to challenge his path and ask for a different alternative path. Once Sinwar is out of the scene, as it is now, it basically could have potential positive ramifications, both in the context of trajectory of a deal regarding the hostages, the Israeli hostages that are being held in captivity in Gaza, as well, maybe, for the ability to start thinking about the day after the war in Gaza, in sense of establishing a new power in Gaza that will be more cooperative and more positively viewed.
Absolutely. You mentioned the hostages there. Very important. We will get back to that. But for a moment, I want to stay on this strategy that we've seen Israel use, killing all of these leaders of these terrorist groups. I mean, they first killed Sinoir's predecessor, Ismail Haniyeh, and then, of course, the head of Hamas's military wing, Mohammed Dev. And these terrorist groups, are they just going to keep replacing their leader? Do you see them as having anyone else left to replace Sinoir, or are they going to finally give in?
Well, there is always somebody else that comes and take power. But in the end of the day, we have to look at some figures and a significant way that they have either in the context of the organization or the party they are part of. In the case of Sinoir, we are definitely looking at someone who was enormously significant. It's not somebody that is likely going to be easily replaced. Hamas knows that. We have to also remember, take into consideration that as long as Sinoir was in power, he was actually able to dictate a very military line within Hamas, and basically that results in or was part of an inner power struggle within Hamas, politically speaking, ideologically speaking. So it's not about the lack of people who potentially could come from and refill the place, but in the end of the day, it's understanding that sometimes there are figures that are not replaceable in the sense that their weight, their role, their impact was enormously significant.
And Avi, you mentioned that the Sinoir was able to quiet dissent, but now that he's gone, would you say that there is growing discontent with what Hamas is doing in Gaza? Is there a growing amount of people who want this all to end?
Well, definitely. You hear voices within the Palestinians in Gaza. You hear voices from the Arab world that for a long period of time have been very unhappy, to put it this way, with Hamas' way and the fact that Hamas, since taking control of Gaza Strip in 2007, has been dragging Gaza Strip to havoc and destruction, and particularly, of course, after its attack on Israel on October 7th. So those voices are definitely existing out there, but I should mention at the same time, there are still voices within the Palestinians that are identifying with Hamas, that are supporting with Hamas. And I think that the biggest question in the end of the day, when you try to look at the day after the war, sort of speaking, one of the major significant questions is what will be the ramifications of the whole, what happened in October 7 and the aftermath. What will be the ramification on the inner Palestinian discussion vis-a-vis the path that the Palestinians want to take ahead? Meaning, are the Palestinians still going to subscribe to Hamas' violent, dead-end street ideology and policy, or are they going to look for a different path that maybe could hold for both of them, for both Israelis and Palestinians, a more positive trajectory? At this point, this is an open question.
Now, Avi, let's talk a little bit more about these hostages there. I want to read a quote from Netanyahu for you real quick. Netanyahu speaking to the families of these hostages. He says, quote, "We have come to terms with Sinoir. This is an important moment in the war, and we will continue with all our might until they are returned." And then he addressed these members of Hamas saying, "Whoever lays down his arms and returns our abductees, we will allow him to leave and live." Your take?
Yes, well, there has been voices in Israel immediately after the news spread that called the government, the Israeli government, to do a move, a gesture or initiative to actually offer people in Gaza Strip who may be holding Israeli hostages to let them go, or to bring information that will lead for the release of the hostages. One of the issues regarding the story of the hostages, 101 Israeli hostages still in captivity in Gaza, is that they are being kept in different places. Many of them, or maybe some of them, are being kept not only by Hamas militants, but also by civilians in Gaza. We have precedent to that issue as well. So the question here is not only the whereabouts of the hostages, but not less significant, who holds them exactly, and if they can be released if such an initiative is going to be offered. So I think that this is an interesting Israeli initiative, trying to seize the moment, trying to take advantage of the momentum, and to maybe hopefully result in a situation where people in Gaza Strip, whether Hamas militants or civilians in Gaza that are holding Israeli hostages, will release those hostages, as Prime Minister Netanyahu says, and in return, their life will be spared.
And so, Avi, do you see a positive outlook so far for the hostage situation?
Well, I think that maybe we could say now cautiously there is some slight better optimism, I would put it this way. But again, we are looking at a very convoluted process. But I think that definitely once Sinoir has been moved away from the scene, this is one significant component. And the other thing is that I think that we have also to take into consideration the position of the Iranian regime that has a lot of influence on Hamas. The Iranian regime is interested in ceasefire in Gaza Strip because it wants to achieve immediately ceasefire in Lebanon as well, where the major proxy of the Iranian Hezbollah is in a very dire situation. So ironically speaking, Sinoir was not only holding Israeli hostages, he was also holding Hezbollah and the Iranian hostages, because the Hezbollah said, I'm going to fight Israel until there will be ceasefire in Gaza Strip. But there is no ceasefire in Gaza Strip. So the war continues and the Hezbollah is in a dire situation. The Iranian regime clearly expressed its desire to have a ceasefire both in Lebanon and in Gaza Strip. That may be an interesting point where maybe the Iranian regime, now that Sinoir is moved away, maybe there is an ability of the Iranian regime to further exacerbate its influence on Hamas, to move forward to such a deal. So that's the reason I'm kind of like saying cautiously optimism, because still there are many moving parts involved. Not all of them are under the control of the Iranians, of course. That's the reason I'm kind of like, relatively speaking, cautiously optimistic.
Absolutely, Avi. Definitely lots of moving parts in this whole situation. Before we leave here, I want to really quickly ask, just in a larger scale, in a bigger picture, where do you see this war going next? I mean, we've still got Iran, as you mentioned, Hezbollah as well. Also, this broader coalition of support behind these terrorists, such as Communist China supporting Iran. What do you see as happening next?
Well, look, we are looking at a very significant shift. I mean, some people are talking about it like a totally new Middle East. I wouldn't go that far, but definitely what we are looking right now is a very significant moment, and particularly because of the major fact, and that is that as of now, when you look at the situation vis-a-vis the Israeli-Hezbollah collision, vis-a-vis the Israeli-Hamas war, vis-a-vis the current situation of Iran, as of now, we can see definitely that the Iranian-backed axis of terror that is rather known by the name of the axis of resistance, that axis is quite significantly weakened. And that is a very significant process, because that axis has been playing an enormously significant role in destabilizing the Middle East for the last couple of decades. That axis is responsible for a huge amount of death and destruction across the Middle East. So the weakening of that axis is a good news for itself. One of the manifestation of that, or the potential ramification, is that once this axis is further weakened, that will enable both Israelis and Palestinians to take a different path, because up until now, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, and other proxies of the Iranians were unfortunately able to dictate their radical agenda, blocking any possibility for a breakthrough, a positive breakthrough in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and blocking possibility for stability in the region. So I would expect that with parallel the weakening of the Iranian-backed axis of resistance, this axis of terror and death, we will see further boosting of regional powers and factors that are interested in stability and want to move towards stability. So as for itself, this is potentially a very positive development.
Absolutely. I think I speak for a lot of people when I say we all hope that things get better for those civilians out there. Avi Melamed, thank you for joining us today.
And in more voting news, a federal judge has blocked an effort by Alabama to remove non-citizens from its voter rolls. The judge said yesterday that changing the voting system less than 90 days before an election is illegal. Alabama Northern District Judge Anna Manaska ruled that federal law has given states a hard deadline of 90 days for decades. She says Alabama's Secretary of State Wes Allen blew the deadline in that he announced the removal of ineligible voters 84 days before the general election. She ordered Alabama to halt its efforts to remove such voters. Her orders also requires Alabama to help counties restore voting status of those removed. The Justice Department sued Alabama in September. It alleged the state violated the 90-day quiet period in the National Voter Registration Act. Early voting has kicked off in North Carolina as the state continues recovering from Hurricane Helene. Trump and Harris are neck and neck in that state. NTD's Melina Weiskopf has the latest.
Early voting has kicked off in North Carolina smoother than expected. Election officials say they have almost all early voting locations in operation. Only 4 of them are inoperative, and those are concentrated in areas that were hit the hardest by Hurricane Helene, specifically in Buncombe County. Now, as for how they're handling those disaster relief shelters, well, the state says they're sending out groups of multi-party people to collect absentee ballots in those disaster relief shelters. As for how both Harris and Trump are faring in the polls in North Carolina, well, they are neck and neck. It always comes down to a very close race between the 2 candidates in North Carolina. As a matter of fact, the last time the state voted for a Democrat in the White House was back in 2008, when former President Barack Obama's name was at the top of the ticket. And now Democrats are hopeful that Vice President Kamala Harris is just as popular within the Black community as Obama was. Of course, Republicans are hoping for the opposite. Just this week, both campaigns really focused on trying to get strong Black voter turnout, specifically among Black men. J.D. Vance just yesterday at a rally in North Carolina tried to separate Vice President Kamala Harris from Obama by using Hurricane Helene as an example, while Kamala Harris tried to liken herself to Obama by focusing on the issues.
I'm going to say something nice about Barack Obama. Right here, but look, 2010, there was a terrible earthquake in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. 2 days later, the 82nd Airborne was in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. God bless the 82nd Airborne. We had a terrible natural disaster an hour away from the 82nd Airborne, and it took 6 days for them to get to North Carolina. That is Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's fault.
And maybe this is the point you're making about what President Obama said. The solutions are not going to happen just overnight. My plan that is about building up home ownership in the Black community, we can do that.
So why are they working so hard to court Black voters? Well, specifically in North Carolina, this state has a huge Black voting population. But what's interesting about it is that young Black voters tend to be trending more towards Republican favor in recent years. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskopf, NTD News.
Chicago police are investigating a case of vandalism at the Trump International Tower and Hotel yesterday evening. At least half a dozen windows were broken, located in the 400 block of North Wabash Avenue. A witness said a man was seen throwing rocks at 6 different windows and then fled the scene. So far, no arrests have been made. The investigation is still ongoing, and anyone with information on the incident is asked to contact the CPD Area 3 detectives at 312-744-8263 or dial 911. Those with information that could help authorities in their investigation can also leave a tip at cpdtip.com, and tips can be filed anonymously. Now, former President Donald Trump will be speaking at the annual Alfred Smith Memorial Foundation dinner. The sold-out fundraising event takes place at the New York Hilton Midtown.
Both presidential candidates were invited, but Vice President Kamala Harris is not expected to attend as she's busy campaigning in Wisconsin.
Moving on now, President Biden is heading to Germany today. It is a trip that he had postponed last week due to Hurricane Milton.
Yes, that's right. The White House says Biden won't meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky during the trip, but Ukraine is likely a focus of the visit. Our foreign correspondent Noah Schmidt has an update from Berlin.
We have been gratified by the coalition of more than 50 countries we have put together to support Ukraine.
President Joe Biden is set to land in Berlin in just a few hours. He's expected to discuss support for Ukraine with European leaders. Officials say he's set to meet with the German, French, and British heads of state tomorrow. Those countries and the US make up the so-called European Quad. They are some of Ukraine's top arms suppliers.
Every country has to make its own decisions based on their capabilities, based on their budgets, about what they can do.
The trip comes a day after the White House unveiled another $425 million in military aid for Ukraine. But this might be a precarious moment for the war-torn nation. American support hangs in the balance as the US election approaches. And the Ukrainian president's victory plan isn't necessarily getting the international support he had wanted.
We hear the word talks from our allies much more often than the word justice. Ukraine is open to diplomacy, but to the fair one.
At the heart of the plan is Ukraine's desire to join NATO, but the alliance has yet to invite the country.
And we continue to work with them about other measures that aren't included in the plan that we believe would position Ukraine to win on the battlefield and ensure a just and lasting peace.
Reporting from Berlin, Germany, this is Noah Schmidt, NTD News.
President Biden spoke to Ukraine's President Zelensky yesterday about efforts to increase security assistance to Ukraine. He also announced a new $425 million military aid package.
The White House says the security package includes air defense capabilities, air-to-ground munitions, armored vehicles, and critical munitions.
Up next, once known as the face of Mexico's war on drugs, the former Secretary of Public Security in Mexico is now sentenced in U.S. to spend decades in prison. Find out more after this break.
When I drink it, the first thing was I feel the warmth in my tummy. It's kind of like gently radiating out, a kind of a very comforting warmth. And it was really good, actually. I felt much better. I did feel actually an effect, and I find that it is actually better when I take it regularly.
It's actually steamed and dried 9 times, and so it's really, the essence is really extracted.
Then the second time I tried it really like on an empty stomach and just 2 teaspoons of it, and over a few times. And wow, that was a big difference, because suddenly I could feel, wow, I was very good energized. I didn't have to eat. I could work outside in the garden for a couple of hours, and I still felt very well. And I was impressed by that. So I think it's a good product.
What if kids in America didn't have to go to bed hungry tonight? What if our moms, dads, and grandparents could put healthy food on the table every day to help us grow strong? What if all of our friends and neighbors had fresh food too, and there was no hunger at all in America? And what if there was a way today for you to help? Call now or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. So many of us don't have enough food to eat, but your monthly gift means families across the country and in your community can fill plates with food. Kids can get healthy meals year-round, even when school's out, and our neighbors can have fresh food. Food that moms, dads, entire families need to thrive. But right now, more people are facing hunger. Feeding America works from coast to coast with partner food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. It takes all of us to make that happen. Will you help too? Please call the number on your screen or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give just $19 a month, and we'll send you this free canvas grocery bag. It's our way of saying thank you for helping to end hunger for our neighbors. Because no kid, no mom or dad, nobody should go hungry in America. Nobody. So what if today was the day you could help nourish futures for our friends, our families, for all of us? Ending hunger is possible. What if we end it together? Call or give online today at helpfeedingamerica.org and your gift can be doubled. Thank you.
Welcome back. He was once the face of Mexico's war on drugs, but now Genaro Garcia Luna is going to prison for nearly 40 years. Garcia Luna was the former Secretary of Public Security in Mexico. He was sentenced in the U.S. just yesterday. Garcia Luna was convicted last year in New York of taking millions of dollars in bribes to protect the drug cartel that he was supposed to be fighting. Prosecutors said he gave the Sinaloa cartel information about investigations and rival gangs, as well as how to move large quantities of drugs without being caught. A cartel kingpin earlier said he personally handed over millions of dollars to Garcia Luna. After the court's sentencing, the president of Mexico at the time, Felipe Calderon, said on social media he respects the court's decision, but he never had verifiable evidence of Garcia Luna's criminal activities.
Nearly 12 million pounds of meat and poultry have now been recalled in the U.S. over fears of contamination. The products recalled include ready-to-eat meals that could contain bacteria causing listeria, a potentially deadly foodborne illness. The original recall was issued on October 9th. Now it has been expanded to include many more products, prepared salads, burritos, and other foods sold at stores and sent to schools. They have all been recalled. The meat used in these products were produced at a plant operated by the company Bruce Pack.
The Department of Agriculture said routine testing found potentially dangerous listeria bacteria in samples of Bruce Pack chicken. Agriculture officials said no cases of listeria have been confirmed in connection with this recall.
President Joe Biden has approved another $4.5 billion in student debt relief. The latest round impacts more than 60,000 public sector workers, including teachers, nurses, and firefighters. The borrowers qualify for debt relief through the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. It was created nearly 2 decades ago, but the Biden administration has expanded it to make it easier to qualify. Since taking office, Biden has canceled more than $175 billion of debt for nearly 5 million people. That's about 11% of all outstanding federal student loan debt. Several of Biden's other efforts to forgive student loans were struck down or tied up in litigation.
With Election Day less than 3 weeks away, a judge in Georgia blocked a measure that requires all ballots to be counted by hand. This decision came after a ruling that demands election officials certify all results by November 12th. NTD's Sam Wong was in D.C. to find out what the people had to say about this.
How do you feel about not finding out the result on Election Day?
I think it's very important for democracy that every vote is counted, and if you're not doing that, then you're suppressing the vote.
There's people voting. We need to know the results as soon as possible.
I don't think it needs to be done on Election Day or even the next day. It might take a few days to get everything counted.
I think the results should be reported immediately after Election Day. It allows too much time for questions. I mean, at the end of the day, if you go ahead and report the results, then everything is said and done. It gives the country opportunity to go ahead and absorb what those results are.
You can transfer billions of dollars in a matter of seconds, and you can't count our votes in a day.
I think it'd be frustrating just in general to not have results at the end of the election day, but I would rather have solid, actual, real results.
As much logistics that we have in this country, it's just ridiculous that you can't complete an election in 24 hours.
There is a little bit of controversy right now in Georgia. So they used to have a law that would require the state to count all the ballots by hand, just so that they can get a more accurate count, right? And then now a judge has rejected that decision. So what do you make of that?
Modern technology, I mean, there's enough that's outdated. You might as well get up to speed with it.
If there's ballots that are damaged in the process of counting through the computer, then that will protect the ones that don't get counted.
They shouldn't need to count the ballots by hand. Why should they? They've had 4 years to figure out how to count their ballot.
The only reason you would cancel something is if you have something to hide. The actual ballots cast had to match the registered voters in Georgia. I don't know that there's any real way that you can do that without hand or personal audit.
Generally speaking, the electronic ballots are doing their job.
Point blank would rather have verified counts. If that means that they need to count them by hand, then we should be doing that.
Whatever yields the best and most accurate results is what they need to do. And if it's by hand count, then they need to get enough people to make that happen on Election Day.
Up next, NATO Chief Mark Rutte reiterated the alliance's promise that Ukraine will be a member in the future, but he refrained from saying when.
Germany is protesting against the European Union's new China tariff. The country's finance minister said it could significantly hit German cars that are built in China. We'll have that and more after the break.
A large retail store just canceled a huge order, leaving us with a ton of extra MyPillows. But you know what? That's their loss. I'm going to make it your gain. For the first time ever, you get standard classic MyPillows for wholesale prices, only $14.88. I can't believe I'm even saying that. Only $14.88. But it gets even better. For a limited time, I'm going to offer my entire classic collection at wholesale prices. Upgrade to a queen-size MyPillow for just $18.88. King size only $1 more. Get my body pillows for $29.88 and multi-use MyPillows for only $9.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on the screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of wholesale pricing for the first time ever on TV, including my standard size MyPillow, only $14.88. They've never been offered this low before. We have limited quantities at this price, so limit's going to be 10, and once they're gone, they're gone.
23 سال 16 سال عمري ما هفت
اما داعش کردی آن برانبر خشک و دایکانی ازدی ما کاری که دور دور لهمو چمک دموکراسی و موافقانی مرو و انسانیت او بارو خی که است های به تایبت لعراق و سوریه بشه که دگرت و با حالانه که اداره اوباما کرد
ریم بو او هفت روز بو و داعش از کرد تامبوم كرا قوتينيز قريا بما متشكر بهر فيدان نبو باوان رحم نبو قدامنا سؤالان من خادران نزر باوان نفستم بس نا وانا قو بس ناش بجوش باش.
They would literally be auctioned in front of soldiers, and then the soldiers begin to bid.
زارود وان همو جيبرن تي حملي زارود الدم عواسي سيبان همو جيبرن
وحشیگریه که توا عیاره ظلمی که یک جار زور گوره لما افرطانه کرده و تعدایی که زور زوریان لیده که اما نه روزانه دست فروشیده
اليوم التوزيع كلنا نصيب.
Imagine being a child, you know, having a child mentality, and these evil people come and wheel you away from the only safety you've ever known.
Welcome back to Newsroom. Now, it was a busy day on the campaign trail yesterday for both presidential hopefuls.
That's right. NTD's Daniel Monahan has key takeaways as former President Trump and Vice President Harris sat down with Fox News.
Okay, seems we might.
Former President Trump's Fox News town hall with newscaster Harris Faulkner in Georgia aired on Wednesday. Trump was asked what he would do to kickstart the economy and help the middle class.
We have tremendous wealth in this country, but it's under our feet. It's called liquid gold, and we're going to bring down your energy costs, and with that, everything's going to follow.
Trump also promised to make it possible for companies to return to the U.S.
We've lost so many businesses. If you're in furniture making, like in North Carolina, they're flocking out of our country because we have politicians that don't know what to do. We're bringing them all back. We have a tax rate that's going to lure them, and we're going to protect them with tariffs.
The former president was asked to discuss the culture war issue of men playing in women's sports and what he would do to address it.
It's such an easy question, and everybody in the room, and you know that answer, we're not going to let it happen. We stop it. We stop it. We absolutely stop it. You can't have it. It's a man playing in the game, I mean, physically from a muscular state.
So how do you stop it? Do you go to the sports leagues? Do you go to the Olympic
You just ban
councils?
it. The president bans it. You just don't let it happen.
Trump pushed back on Senator Raphael Warnock, saying sending him to the White House would literally be dangerous. The former president says he has the endorsement of Border Patrol and the Fraternal Order of Police.
We had the safest border in the history of our country. Now we have the most unsafe border in the history of our country. Law enforcement's with me 100%, and we have to keep our community safe.
Trump also vowed to end all sanctuary cities. Meanwhile, Vice President Harris discussed immigration on Wednesday with Fox News' Bret Baier as well. Harris was asked if she regrets their administration's decision to terminate the Remain in Mexico border policies.
The first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the...
Finish?
Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please?
But
you have to let me finish,
you
please.
Harris blamed the Border Patrol Union's recent endorsement of Trump on the bipartisan bill she accuses him of undermining.
I think they're frustrated, and I get it. They want support. They want support, and that's what that border security bill would have done.
Harris also waded into culture war issues. Baier played an ad of her speaking in support of cross-sex surgeries for prison inmates. She was asked if she still supported such surgeries for prisoners and illegal immigrants.
I will follow the law, and it's a law that Donald Trump actually followed. You're probably familiar with, now it's a public report, that under Donald Trump's administration, these surgeries were available on a medical necessity basis.
Harris said it's important to focus on the biggest issues that affect Americans.
I'm offering a plan to deal with affordable housing. I'm offering a plan to deal with what we need to do to strengthen small businesses, which are the backbone of America's economy.
Harris promised that her presidency would not be a continuation of Biden's presidency. The vice president was also in Pennsylvania on Wednesday. She spoke at Washington Crossing Historic Park. She was joined by many Republicans, including ex-Trump aides, who are supporting her candidacy. She later headed to Wisconsin. Trump was in Florida on Wednesday, reaching out to Latino voters at a Univision town hall. The former president will hold a rally in Detroit on Friday. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte reiterated the alliance's pledge that Ukraine will be a member of NATO in the future, but he could not say when exactly.
And until then, he said Ukraine can count on NATO's shared unity in the face of the war.
Dear Volodymyr, it is great to have you here at NATO headquarters. I look forward to the day that Ukraine is here as a member of this alliance. And until then, we will continue to do all that we can to ensure Ukraine prevails. This is vital for our shared security.
Now, NATO has declared that Ukraine will become a member, but cannot do so while at war, as this would draw NATO directly into conflict with Russia. Ukrainian's President Volodymyr Zelensky reminded his allies that some commitments made at the NATO summit in July were still waiting to be fulfilled. He stressed that it is very important to deliver on these swiftly.
A British migrant charity says the UK could grant asylum to 62,000 migrants. It follows a shift in policy to no longer ban immigrants from claiming asylum if they arrive illegally. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more for us from London.
A new report estimates that the UK will grant asylum to more than 62,000 migrants as the British government seeks to clear a backlog of claims. That's more than half of the nearly 120,000 claims inherited from the previous government, and comes as the government insists that it is committed to ending the use of hotels to house asylum seekers. The migrant charity Refugee Council analysed official data on asylum grant rates in the year ending June 2024. It indicates more than 62,000 more people could be recognised as refugees in the UK, which includes small boat migrants who crossed to Britain illegally from France. The migrants were previously blocked from claiming asylum by a law that said those arriving illegally should be detained and deported to a safe third country, but the new Labour government lifted this requirement. The Refugee Council said there will be 59,000 fewer claims in the backlog at the start of next year compared to if no policy changes had been made. They say this will save the government between $200 and $312 million. This forecast was revealed amid claims Britain's Home Office was considering reopening asylum hotels used by the previous government. Currently, nearly 30,000 migrants are being housed in hotels at a cost to the taxpayer of $3.9 million per day. The Home Office did not confirm if they were going to use more or reopen old hotels. A spokesman said the new government has so far removed 3,000 people with no right to be in the UK and is driving down the costs of asylum accommodation. Turning to Europe, the EU is considering setting up deportation centres outside the Union where it would send failed asylum seekers. It's drawing lessons from Italy's migrant deal with Albania. The European Commission President said the EU's migration policy can only be sustained if those with no right to stay are effectively returned. This marks a major shift in Europe's immigration debate. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
Now, there's a growing controversy surrounding two top Paris museums. They have been accused of bending to Chinese political influence by erasing the name Tibet from their exhibitions.
According to media outlet Le Monde, this was done following the request from a Chinese regime representative. NTD international correspondent David Vives has the story from Paris.
The Musée Guimet and Musée du Quai Branly, two museums displaying Asian art pieces, recently changed the labels of Tibetan artifacts. Instead of seeing Tibet on the labels, visitors now read Himalayan World or Zhejiang region, the Chinese name for Tibet. For example, these Tibetan dance costumes at the Musée du Quai Branly now list China as the country of origin. In an open letter published in September, 25 experts, including art specialists, historians, and professors of universities, asked the museums not to remove Tibet from the art pieces labels. They said that this was done under the influence of the Beijing regime. According to information published by Le Monde newspaper, a representative of the Chinese Communist Party asked the museum to do this alongside the celebration this year of the 60th anniversary of diplomatic ties between France and China. Frédéric Dumas is a former member of parliament who worked on bills supporting human rights in China. She says the museum's move supports the Chinese regime's political agenda.
If something comes from Tibet, but we're going to say it comes from China, that's what the Chinese regime wants. It sounds like a little signal of cowardice to me. People are not aware about the threat that is, the Chinese regime. It's not like you have a monster at your doorstep, thought.
Dumas and other experts said this is part of a broader effort by the Chinese regime to rewrite Tibet's history and suppress its identity.
But every time we let him influence us in such ways, one little step at the time, it's a shame because it's getting more and more complicated to go back. Think about our children, what we will transmit to them.
While the Musée du Quai Branly has acknowledged some errors and promised to make corrections, the Musée Guimet defends its decision to rename galleries as part of a broader cultural approach. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Now to the trade battle between Europe and China. Germany's finance minister voiced concerns yesterday over cars that are being built in China, saying that they could no longer be competitive in their home market after being charged high European Union taxes. This is after the European Union passed a tariff hike on Chinese electric vehicles 2 weeks ago. Although Germany voted nay, the Council still collected enough support from the bloc. The European Union wants to level the playing field for cars imported from China and cars that are made in Europe. But the decision puts Germany, the world's biggest automaker, in an awkward position. Many German cars are assembled in China. The German Economic Institute last year said more and more German automakers have relocated their production lines to China over the past few years. The German finance minister stressed that German car makers had little to fear from their Chinese counterparts.
I don't want to be impolite, but the European, and especially the German car industry, has little to fear from Chinese products. The best cars are built in Germany. In other words, German engineering products which were built in China with electric engines we would love to have are being taxed in a way when they enter Europe where they are possibly no longer competitive. That's what I call self-inflicted damage.
Germany's auto sector is a key industry to the country's economy. Before the EU and Beijing find a better resolution, the new EU tariff on China will take effect at the end of this month, and it is expected to last 5 years.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had some strong words for India yesterday. Trudeau made the remarks in relation to the murder of a Sikh separatist leader in Canada.
As I've said a number of times, we are not looking to provoke or create a fight with India. The Indian government made a horrific mistake in thinking that they could interfere as aggressively as they did in the safety and sovereignty of Canada.
Trudeau made the comments 2 days after Canada kicked out 6 Indian diplomats. The government linked them to the murder of a Sikh separatist leader. It also alleged a broader effort to target Indian dissidents in the country. The Canadian leader's comments were the strongest he has made in a year-long dispute that plunged bilateral relations to a new low. Trudeau said Canada may take further steps to ensure Canadian security, but he declined to give details. India denies the allegations of interference and has expelled 6 Canadian diplomats in a tit-for-tat move.
Now we turn to the Korean peninsula, where tensions are escalating. North Korea, which is a nuclear-armed communist country, is taking new action. Take a look.
Communist North Korea is drifting farther and farther from its southern neighbor. It labeled South Korea a hostile state on Thursday. North Korea state media confirmed the country's National Assembly amended the constitution. This change aligns with leader Kim Jong-un's vow to abandon unification with the South as the national goal. And earlier this week, North Korea's military destroyed road and railway connections at the border. The access to the South is now completely blocked. North Korea called it a legitimate action against a hostile state. South Korea has strongly condemned the action and said it would not back down from its effort for a peaceful reunification with the North. Joy Chu, NTD News, Taiwan.
Up next, the Los Angeles Archdiocese has agreed to pay over $800 million to settle sexual abuse claims brought by over 1,300 alleged victims in the Catholic Church. Find out more after the break.
Tangazo hili linahusu njaa. Tarajia kuona watoto wakiwa na njaa katika maeneo haya. Mambo yalikuwa bora kwa miaka mingi. Tuliweza kupigana na njaa na watoto wachache walikufa. Lakini sasa mambo yamebadilika na kwa mabaya zaidi. Hii ni kwa sababu wakati huu ukame umeangamiza zaidi.
Через війни та конфлікти ми мусимо залишати наші домівки і всі наші речі. Ми навіть не маємо їжі. Тому нам потрібна ваша допомога.
Millions of children are fighting to survive due to inequality, conflict, poverty, and the climate crisis. Save the Children is working alongside communities to provide a better life for children. And there's a way you can help. Please call or go online to give just $10 a month. Only 33 cents a day. We urgently need 1,000 new monthly donors in the next 30 days to help the children we support around the world. You can help provide food, medicine, care, and protection, plus so much more that a child needs, by calling right now and giving just $10 a month.
Ви можете допомогти голодуючим родинам вижити.
All we need are 1,000 monthly donors in the next 30 days. Please call or go online now with your monthly gift of just $10. Thanks to generous government grants, every dollar you give can have up to 10 times the impact. And when you call with your credit card, we will send you this Save the Children tote bag as a thank you for your support.
Toto kote duniani потребують вашої допомоги.
Your small monthly donation of just $10 could be the reason a child in crisis survives. Please call or go online to givetosave.org to help save lives.
For those who cherish tradition and stand for the values that built this great nation, Republican Red Winery proudly embodies the spirit of American greatness. Let's raise a glass to forging our own future building a bigger, better, and stronger America. The best is yet to come.
Thanks for staying with us. The Los Angeles Archdiocese has agreed to pay over $800 million to resolve sexual abuse claims brought on by over 1,300 alleged victims in the Catholic Church.
With some cases even dating back into the 1940s, NTD's Christina Corona has more.
The Archdiocese of Los Angeles reached an $880 million settlement on Wednesday with 1,353 victims of childhood sexual abuse. Public records reveal that over 300 priests who served in the LA Archdiocese have been accused of sexually abusing minors. The survivors came forward following the passage of California's Assembly Bill 218, which opened a 3-year window to revive civil claims for past sexual abuse involving minors, with some cases dating back to the 1940s. Los Angeles Archbishop Jose Gomez approved the settlement, which will be funded through their reserves, investments, bank financing, and contributions from religious orders and other parties. Gomez said in a statement, "I am so sorry for every one of these incidents from the bottom of my heart." He goes on to say, "My hope is that this settlement will provide some measure of healing for what these men and women have suffered." The Archdiocese of Los Angeles previously paid $740 million in settlements, raising the total payout to over $1.5 billion. Christina Corona, NTD News, Los Angeles.
People around the world are getting excited for the supermoon this month. You could already see it last night, but it's set to reach its full lunar phase tonight. In this time-lapse video, the supermoon is rising behind the Statue of Liberty here in New York. And in Indonesia's capital, crowds gathered to get a glimpse of the supermoon as it lit up the night sky. A supermoon happens when a full lunar phase syncs up with an especially close swing around the Earth. This usually happens only 3 or 4 times a year and consecutively. Tonight's supermoon is the 3rd or 4th supermoon this year, and it's set to appear even bigger and brighter than in the previous 2. It's also set to team up with a comet for a rare stargazing phenomenon. It's a must-do for visitors when in Rome. Turn your back to the Trevi Fountain and flip a coin over your shoulder while making a wish. Millions of coins from tourists all over the world are dropped into the water each year. But where does the money go?
An eternal story in the eternal city. If a first-time tourist in Rome wants to make a wish and one day return to the city, all they have to do is throw a coin into the Trevi Fountain. For more than 15 years, the Catholic charity Caritas has been using the average 1.5 million coins collected each year to fund charitable activities.
I love knowing that when you flip a coin, you can help people in need. And in a city as beautiful as Italy, which is a holy city, that deep down we can help our neighbors in that way. With so much need in the world, I find it precious. It is a sign of hope and help, of charity and of joy as well.
The company in charge of collecting the coins is ACEA. It's Rome's energy and water supplier.
The collection of the coins from the fountain is done using some specific tools in order to try to get the coins into the center of the fountain. And with a special pump, we try to suck the coins into that tool, which I will show you later.
These special vacuum pumps to suck the coins into a single area twice a week. It sucks up all that is found. There can be some bizarre and diverse objects.
Inside the fountain, we find everything. As you can imagine, by throwing the coin, anything can fall. We found bracelets, necklaces, and dentures. We found umbilical cords. We found a little bit of everything inside the fountain.
The entire operation is done in the presence of the Rome Municipal Police. The Caritas volunteer then takes the bags to a secret destination. A great number of activities are funded with the money collected from the Trevi Fountain, such as food banks, a youth center, a day center for Alzheimer patients, and the Caritas Medical Center.
We go on day by day. We are also counting on Providence in this respect. What interests us is that we know that they are used to promote the most diverse charitable activities.
Around half the money collected from the fountain is used to help poor families located in Rome.
A bit more than 50% is dedicated to supporting poor families from many different countries. I would like to say that if there is one thing that matches the tourists that come from so many countries in the world, it is that the people, the families that we help, really come from so many countries in the world.
The right way to go to the poor. So I think that's a transfer of the feeling from the people who are throwing them into the fountain, and then the journey is from their feeling towards the other people who are receiving that. That should be a nice journey.
A wish to see Rome again turned into a blessing for those in need.
Moving on to some of my favorite news pieces every day. Animal news time now. 2 rescued southern sea otters made their formal debut at the New York Aquarium today. The 2 female otters were rescued off the coast of California when they were very young and were deemed non-releasable as pups. They were cared for at other locations of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums before arriving in New York, where they will now reside. Look at them. Southern sea otters, also known as California sea otters, live on the coast of California, hence their name. Historically, they numbered in the hundreds of thousands in the North Pacific Ocean, but their numbers plummeted in the early 1900s due to the fur trade. The United States Fish and Wildlife Service estimates that 3,000 remain in the wild. They are so cute. I love them.
Indeed.
You know, Carrie, I believe according to the Marine Mammal Commission, they actually have the densest fur of any animal, which insulates them in the water.
Who knew?
Yeah, and they also have these little pockets on their elbows that they put their favorite rocks in. It's super cute.
You're full of fun facts, Fiona. I love it. The New York Aquarium has provided a home for 11 rescued sea otters since 1991.
Love it. All right, coming up now after this break, a multi-million-dollar settlement. The Catholic Archdiocese of LA has agreed to pay a record $880 million to settle hundreds of child sexual abuse claims. Stay tuned for that.
My dad was a farmer, and when I saw him on a horse, the guy was bigger than life. One of the things that he had a hard time doing was showing the emotion. Maybe it was because the way he was raised, or believing that men provide and they don't struggle. But we all struggle. I want to show emotion to my kids. I want them to know when I'm happy, I want them to know when I'm sad, and I want them to see me working through things. The biggest reward I get from being a dad is watching my kids accomplish a goal, watching them light up. Nothing brings a bigger smile to my face. So I make my kids a priority. Whether it's hitting a baseball, a dance rehearsal, you name it, I'm there. They're gonna remember that they grew up loved. Be brave. Be there every day. And allow your kids to know that it's okay to struggle. That even dad doesn't know the answer sometimes, but we're gonna figure it out together.
I didn't ask to lose my mother or to be abused at 5 years old. I didn't ask to be kicked out of my house with nowhere to go. I didn't ask for any of this. But I did ask for help, and Covenant House was there. Thanks to their love and support, and to generous people like you, I got what I needed to take control of my life.
For the young people who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations, Covenant House is there providing safety, hope, and a brighter future. Call or go online now. For a gift of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can provide hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love to more than 2,000 young people who sleep at a Covenant House every night. 1 in 10 young adults will experience homelessness this year. Your gift can help reach them when they need it most.
I didn't ask for my parents and my family to disown me. I didn't ask to end up in a homeless shelter. The beauty of it all is that I found Covenant House.
The need is overwhelming. But your monthly support will make sure no young person is ever turned away. Call or go online right now to safeplacetosleep.org with your gift of just $19 a month. With your monthly donation, you'll receive this soft, comforting blanket as a reminder of the warmth and safety your gift will provide a young person tonight.
Covenant House really helped me and really helped mold me into the woman I am today. If there's no Covenant House, where would I be today?
Your monthly gift is urgently needed to reach young people in communities like yours who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations. Show them they're loved and not alone. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Fiona G.
I'm Carrie Dunst.
President Joe Biden is en route to visit Germany to discuss the Russia-Ukraine war. Germany is also set to present him with the country's highest honor.
Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris attends 3 campaign events in the battleground state of Wisconsin today.
Israel says that it has killed the leader of Hamas. He was responsible for planning the October 7th attacks. What the future of the war looks like now after his death.
North Carolina kicks off early voting as the state continues recovery efforts from Hurricane Helene. Trump and Harris are tied in the state, highlighting the importance of winning over black voters.
The Catholic Archdiocese of LA has agreed to pay a record amount to settle hundreds of child sexual abuse claims. Find out more about the multi-million-dollar settlement.
Once known as the face of Mexico's war on drugs, the former Secretary of Public Security in Mexico now sentenced to spend decades in prison.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
All right, the State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller is giving a media briefing right now. Let's tune in real quick.
Both as we were waiting to have this information confirmed, they notified us early this morning that they believed they had killed Sinoir, but they wanted to conduct testing to confirm it. And then we had a number of conversations, as you might imagine, at several different levels to try and confirm that information. And we'll have further conversations in the days ahead. I think, as you saw the president say in his statement, he plans to speak to Prime Minister Netanyahu in the near future.
You just said that the Israelis notified U.S. early this morning that they believe Sinoir was killed. Can you just give us a little bit more detail? Was that notification, did it come through this building, or did it go to the White House or the Pentagon? Do you know where that channel was?
It came in multiple channels. There were people in this building who were notified. There were people in our embassy who were notified. I certainly would expect that people in the Pentagon and people in the White House were notified as well. As you know, we have multiple channels of communication with the government of Israel, and we were told over multiple channels early this morning.
And you also, you and other U.S. officials in the last hour have been saying now it's time to bring an end to this war between Hamas and Israel. But we've been watching as Israel has been conducting these counterterrorism operations in Gaza because they say Hamas is reconstituting. If the time is now to bring an end to this conflict, should they stop those counterterrorism operations?
So Israel achieved an incredibly important strategic objective today. But their other strategic objectives remain. First and foremost among them, the return of the hostages, including the 7 Americans who remain held hostage. So we want to see those hostages returned home. I know Israel wants to see those hostages returned home, and it's important that they continue to work to return those hostages home. But ultimately, we want to make sure that they take the strategic objectives that they have accomplished, and today was a significant one, but they've accomplished other strategic objectives over the course of the past year in degrading Hamas's military capabilities to the extent that in no sense could they launch an attack today that looked anything like the attack of last October 7th. They are in no way a functioning military force the way that they were on October 7th, though they, of course, still maintain significant ability to wreak havoc and launch terrorist attacks. So what we want to see from them, and this is what we'll be discussing with them, is how they take those strategic objectives that they have met and turn that into an enduring strategic victory. And from our perspective, that means a path forward in Gaza that isn't just a military path forward for degrading Hamas and continuing to fight Hamas fighters over and over and seeing 100 fighters killed and 100 new fighters join over the course of a day or a month, and being in this perpetual cycle of continuing to fight on the ground there. What we want to see is a path forward that brings the hostages home and sets the conditions for the day after, where you have reconstruction in Gaza, you have actual security in Gaza, and you have a political path forward for the people in Gaza that is determined by the people in Gaza. And so those are the conversations we are going to have with the government of Israel, as well as with our other partners in the days ahead. Those are the conversations the Secretary started already today with his counterparts in Qatar and Saudi Arabia.
But I guess you didn't answer the question as to how the counterterrorism operations that are ongoing fit into that. If you want them to drive forth an enduring victory, you said, should they stop those counterterrorism operations because Hamas has already been dismantled to such a significant degree?
Look, Hamas still does pose a threat, and Israel still has a right to take on that threat, and they still have a right to try and put pressure on Hamas and try and free the hostages that remain there. But ultimately, we think the path forward is not just to continue military operations that they will have to repeat over and over again. Because in our judgment, and in the judgment of our partners in the region and our partners around the world, a path forward that doesn't include the reconstruction and security and rebuilding and a political path forward in Gaza is not a path that will actually provide an end to the war. And that's what we want to see ultimately, is an end to the war. Now, I can't tell you that that's something that we'll have agreement on with the Israeli government tomorrow or next week or with partners in the region, but it's something that we're going to continue to pursue.
And then do you have an early assessment as to where, given you said you've been in regular contact with Israeli officials over the last few hours, we saw the speech from Prime Minister Netanyahu. Do you have an initial assessment as to where Netanyahu stands on this right now? If he's going to be in lockstep with the United States in driving forth an end to this conflict after Sinoir's death?
So the president's going to talk to the prime minister in the coming days. I think it's appropriate to wait for that conversation before.
And then just last question. That makes sense. The day after plan. There have been many conversations in this building about when you guys are going to release that has been long worked on in this building. Is the time now?
So I don't want to preview any announcements, but obviously we want to seize the opportunity created by the death of Sinoir. And that means an opportunity to end the war, and it means an opportunity to get to the day after. And so we have been working on this for months, and it's not just happening inside this building, but as you know, happening in conversations with our partners, first and foremost in the region, but also our partners in other countries around the world. And we do want to look to push those plans forward in the days ahead. I'm not going to preview any specific announcements or give any specific timing. Again, we're only hours after what is a fairly seismic event, but certainly it's something that we want to pursue aggressively in the days ahead.
Thanks.
Daphne.
Thank you. To follow up on Sean's questions about Lebanon, Jake Sullivan just said nothing in the Middle East is unrelated. So how can you delink the ceasefire in Gaza from the fighting in Lebanon and pursue these separately?
So that's the point I just made, which is we have never believed that the two conflicts ought to be linked together. And just when you look at it, you're pursuing separate diplomatic resolutions with the state of Lebanon and trying to find a ceasefire agreement in Gaza. So, of course, Hezbollah linked the two conflicts even when we didn't think they were linked, and Hezbollah has continued to link the conflicts. What we have always believed is stability brings about stability. So if you could bring an end to the conflict in Gaza, that heightens the chances of reaching a diplomatic resolution to the fight across the blue line, and that remains our assessment.
And then Netanyahu said today that their task is not complete, that they will continue full force until the hostages return, and that the war is still not over. What's your reaction to those comments? Do you see them at odds at all with Biden's statement, which mentioned ending the war, and the administration's aim of trying to push forward the ceasefire proposal?
So, as I said a moment ago in response to another question, they have a very real, very legitimate strategic objective that they need to continue to pursue, which is the return of all the hostages. And we have a very real interest in that objective as well, because 7 of those 101 hostages are Americans, and we want to see them return. So we're going to be in conversation with them about the best way to achieve that objective in the days ahead. But as you know, we've long been clear that we think reaching a ceasefire that brings those hostages home and sets the conditions for an end of the war is the right path forward. And we've had long-standing conversations with Israel about that, and we hope we have an opportunity now.
Is continued fighting a viable path for the return of hostages at all, or is it a ceasefire?
So as I just said, long-term, no, we don't believe it is. We don't believe that it's not just that whether it's a path for the return of hostages. That you could see how you might return some hostages in one-off operations here and there. But no, you're not going to return all the hostages through fighting, nor are you going to achieve a durable, lasting end to the war just by fighting on the battlefield, because you kill one terrorist and see that terrorist replaced by someone else. And so ultimately, you need to find not just, you need to achieve not just military objectives, but also political objectives, and you need to create a pathway forward for the Palestinian people.
Are there specific steps that you want to see Israel take in the coming days and weeks toward a ceasefire?
We're going to have those conversations privately with them before we talk about it publicly. Again, as I predicted I would say this in response to another question, we are just hours after this event. I think it's appropriate to let the president have a conversation with the prime minister, appropriate for the secretary to have conversations with his counterparts before we prescribe too much of that from this podium.
And sorry, last one. On the conversations that you mentioned Blinken has had today, has he specifically discussed post-war Gaza?
He has. Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Going back to your opening remarks and the statement that we heard from the VP Harris and the statement issued by President Biden, Sullivan at the White House as well, all considering killing Sinoir is a renewed opportunity to end the war in Gaza. And as you said, your priority is first to release the hostages, stop the fighting, and allow the Palestinians to rebuild their homes. But maybe there's also the question now arise that something that used to bother you when we asked you before, that this didn't start on October 7, started long ago, and if not solving those roots in the future, October 7 will keep happening again. And my question is, yes, you helped Israel to with weapons and weapon shipments and also political cover to achieve the military objective of eliminating the threats in Gaza and now the ongoing operation in southern Lebanon. But what are you going to do after the war to push Israel more toward the solution that you see fit for this conflict, especially that advising them seems to be enough?
So it's not just the United States making clear our views on this question, but it is countries in the region and countries around the world who have made clear their views on this question. And in some cases, it's not just their views, it's their policies. So you'll recall that on a trip the secretary made earlier this year, he went to Israel and made clear that what he had heard from countries in the region is that they were ready for a new path forward with Israel as well. There were countries in the region that were ready to put aside decades-long disputes and normalize relations with Israel, and present a new alliance of countries inside the region that would isolate Iran. So there are enormous benefits for Israel's security, for Israel's economic development, for Israel's relations with its neighbors and its standing in the world, to finding a political path forward that allows the Palestinian people to realize their aspirations. Now, I get the tension inherent in your question, which is we cannot make that choice for the government of Israel or for the people of Israel. All we can do is lay out to them the upside of ultimately moving forward with a path to a reunited Gaza and the West Bank and a political path forward for the Palestinian people. And we can lay out the risks of not pursuing that path, and the risks are well known. But it is Israel that has to make that decision in the same way that other countries in the decision have to, in the region, have to make their own decisions about the types of relationships that they want to have with Israel.
Matt, I mean, you must know that the world doesn't work this way. If one country doesn't adhere to UN Security Council resolutions, and in fact there will always be ways to force them toward it, whether by UN sanctions, American sanctions, more pressure on the government to abide by the international law. And the international law states that the West Bank is an occupied land, and the two-state solutions is the way forward. But I'm asking you, I know that other countries in the international community agrees with you, but you are blocking the international agencies like the UN and others from taking any action toward Israel to force it into making this decision. And at the same time, you as the most powerful Israel ally will not take these steps as well. You are just getting, what are you doing? As I heard several times here in this briefing, you advise them, and whatever they want to do, they're going to do.
Because we believe that ultimately this is a pathway forward that needs to be negotiated among the parties, not imposed upon them. And that has been the longstanding position of the United States. It will continue to be our position. But without making any predictions of what will happen in the future, the two paths that I just laid out are very stark, and they're very different paths for the state of Israel, and they're very different paths for the region. And so we and other countries in the region will continue to make clear to Israel the risks of continued instability and the real rewards of a path forward for the Palestinian people, and they will have to make their decisions just as other countries do.
Thank you.
Yeah, Livia.
Does the U.S.
I'll go.
believe right now?
And that was Matt Miller at the State Department taking on questions about Hamas leader Sinoir's death. And now we're going to go over to the Pentagon's press secretary, Air Force Major General Pat Ryder, who briefs the news media at the Pentagon. So let's tune in.
Things like air defense to coordinate, to exchange information to ensure that we have a holistic picture and can respond to contingencies throughout the area of responsibility, to include supporting the defense of Israel. Thanks. Let me go to John, and then I'll go to Charlie. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you very much, General. This administration has been saying that Hamas have been largely destroyed, and that's why Israel can agree to a ceasefire. And today the Vice President said that Hamas have been decimated. Would you say to your Israeli counterparts, to the Israeli government, that if they made the decision to agree to a ceasefire today, especially after today's development, that wouldn't be a silly decision militarily, that they can trust that decision?
Well, as I'm sure you can appreciate, I'm not going to provide military-to-military advice from the podium to our Israeli counterparts. To your point, Hamas has been incredibly degraded, as evidenced by the killing of their leader, a significant number of their forces, and certainly do not resemble anything close to what they were on October 7, or the ability to conduct the kinds of operations we saw them. So I'll leave it to the Israelis to talk about their plans as it relates to Hamas. But as I highlighted earlier, and as the president highlighted in his statement, the killing of and the death of Sinoir certainly does present an opportunity, and I'll just leave it there.
Can I just one quick follow-up? So as far as I understand, this administration thinks that it makes sense right now to agree to a ceasefire. That's pretty clear, I guess.
Again, I'm Department of Defense, so broadly speaking, we absolutely support a ceasefire so that we can ensure that humanitarian assistance is getting into Gaza, that the Palestinian people can see a restoration of security and stability. But we also recognize the threat that Hamas has posed to Israel, and so we'll continue to consult with Israel and our partners in the region, but obviously want to see a ceasefire as soon as possible. And most importantly, the release of the hostages that continue to be held by Hamas. Charlie.
Thanks, General. Sinoir had American blood on his hands.
And the vice president was willing to go a little bit further than you will from there, saying American special operations and intelligence personnel have worked closely with their Israeli counterparts to locate and track Sinoir. He's dead now, so we're not at risk of foiling any sort of intelligence around that. But are you not willing to give us an idea?
I'm not sure what I said that was contrary to that. What I was asked was there direct U.S. involvement in this particular Israeli operation, and I said no.
Did U.S. Special Forces or intelligence know where Sinoir was when this happened?
Again, I'm not going to get into intelligence. What I'm telling you is this was an Israeli operation and that we've been sharing information and intelligence in support of hostage recovery efforts and the tracking of these leaders who have been holding hostages, to include Americans. And so, in so much as it's helped to inform Israeli operations in general, writ large, certainly it has played a role. But in terms of this particular, what happened today or last night, again,
it's an important question.
And I just answered it. So let me go on to Joseph.
Thanks. I know you said the secretary spoke to his Israeli counterpart before the Sinoir's death was confirmed, but did the secretary, because as far as we know, you guys haven't received a day after plan from the Israelis in Gaza yet, is that correct?
Again, from a Department of Defense standpoint, we're continuing to talk with our Israeli counterparts in terms of what that would look like. Certainly, it will be a complex undertaking, but, more to follow on that.
And then just to follow up on that, does the department think there's anything more to be done militarily in Gaza from the Israeli point of view?
So that's really a question for the Israelis. Again, I think we've been pretty clear that we want to see a ceasefire. We want to see a restoration of a significant flow of humanitarian assistance into Gaza. We want to ensure, though, that Hamas is not in a position to conduct the kinds of attacks that it did on October 7th. Certainly they are, down for the count in terms of their leader. But again, I'll defer to the Israelis to talk about their comfort level on that.
Quick last one. What's the secretary going to do in the Vatican? I think he's got that on the last part of his trip.
He's got an official visit, the Vatican City. Again, we'll have a readout of that when he visits there. So let me go to Wafa. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, General. Over the years, Hamas has shown resilience with replacing leaders when they were killed. So what's different now? Why the assessment within this administration that the killing of Sinoir would remove a significant obstacle in Gaza?
Well, as you highlight, and this is always a challenge with terrorist organizations, is that you remove the head and another is quickly replaces. So I'm certain that's something that the Israelis will continue to keep an eye on, as will we. But I also don't think you can discount the significance, again, from a counterterrorism standpoint, the role that Sinoir has played in leading this organization, also as the architect, so to speak, of the October 7 Hamas attack against Israel. It's significant that he's been taken off the battlefield. Let me go to the phone here real quick. Dan Lamoth, Washington Post.
General, thanks for your time. I wanted to get your assessment. Does the Pentagon have an assessment, and maybe would be a better way to put it, of whether with the death of Sinoir, whether this is a particularly dangerous time for U.S. troops in the region, whether you anticipate any kind of retaliation by any of the militias or Iran or anything as a result?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I can't predict the future, and I'm not going to speculate. We already know that the Middle East is in a very tense situation right now and have taken significant steps to ensure that our forces that are in the region, as well as our citizens, are protected. And so, as we always do, we'll continue to keep our head on a swivel, protect our forces, support the defense of Israel, and be ready to respond to any variety of contingencies should they arise. Let me go to Phil Stewart, Reuters.
Yeah, hi. So sorry to go over this again, but I'm a little confused. I thought Sinoir was a particularly vexing target for intelligence, for the intelligence community. And the comments today suggest that you did have a fix on him at some point and that you you may have contributed to the intelligence picture that that led to this operation without U.S. support. So could you just explain? Did U.S. intelligence then? Are you suggesting U.S. intelligence had a fix on Sinoir?
What I'm suggesting, Phil, is that just to be crystal clear, this was an Israeli operation. There was no U.S. forces directly involved. The United States has helped contribute information and intelligence as it relates to hostage recovery and the tracking and locating of Hamas leaders who have been responsible for holding hostages. And so certainly that contributes in general to the picture. But again, this was an Israeli operation, and I would refer you to them to talk about the details of how the operation went down. Thank you. Let me go to Howard Altman.
Hey, thanks. Really appreciate it. A couple questions about Ukraine. One, what is the Pentagon's assessment of how many North Korean troops are in Russia ready to fight in Ukraine? And secondly, what is the Pentagon's assessment of how the Kursk incursion is going? There's some reports that Ukraine has lost about half the territory invaded. I was hoping you can give me the Pentagon's assessment of both of those things. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Howard. Definitely seen the reporting and the comments about potential DPRK forces, going to Russia or going to Ukraine. I can tell you right now, we're looking into those. We can't confirm or corroborate those reports. If true, that would demonstrate an increase in the cooperation between Russia and North Korea. And I think that would also demonstrate the situation that Russia finds itself in, the dire situation that it finds itself in terms of its forces on the battlefield. As you've heard us recently say, the casualties that Russia is experiencing on the front lines are extremely significant, upwards of 600,000 killed or wounded. And so it just demonstrates the desperation in terms of identifying additional forces for their military. But it's something that we'll continue to keep a close eye on. And then I'm sorry, your second question?
The second question was about Kursk. There's some reporting that Ukraine has lost about half of the territory it gained in that Kursk incursion. I'm just wondering if the Pentagon has assessment of how that's going.
Based on the information I have, that is not accurate. There has been some incremental, a small amount of territory retaken by the Russians in Kursk, but at this stage, nothing that we would consider significant.
That there was Pentagon spokesperson Major General Pat Ryder.
That's right. A lot of talk there, as we already reported earlier today, the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. A lot still remains to be seen. We're at a major development where we're at a crossroads, really. A lot could happen. So really, we just have to wait and see what developments come next.
Indeed. And when we come back, we'll have a former Israeli security Shin Bet official to break it down with us. He once interrogated Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar for 180 hours in an Israeli prison. He calls Sinoir the most cruel man he has ever met.
Well, we will be having an expert to discuss how Sinwar's death is going to impact the war in the Middle East, so stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I received 2 stents in my arteries. Stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. I have met so many survivors. Each of them tells a story that can be so helpful to women out there.
Everything was pretty good. It was a very happy life. I was given the diagnosis that I had peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is basically a pregnancy-induced heart failure. They told me my only chance was a heart transplant.
And the American Heart Association helped make that possible. Their research helped save me.
I think everyone should support the American Heart Association. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR. The next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. You can be part of that very important work that the American Heart Association is doing to save lives everywhere. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save lives.
I'm grateful for just every day that I get with my children. I am very thankful for the American Heart Association.
Heart disease is America's #1 killer, and your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love. Listen to your heart. The only reason I'm here today is because I did. So please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now. Join me as a monthly donor today and help save even more lives.
The 7th NTD International Piano Competition will take place at the Kaufman Music Center in New York City. Pianists from around the world will come together to revive the great piano masterpieces. Join us on this uplifting journey. The semifinals, finals, and the winner's concert will be open to audiences and live streamed from October 17th to the 19th. Get tickets now at 212-501-3330.
A performance that truly matters for each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. See it at least once in your lifetime. Shen Yun. Get tickets now at shenyun.com.
Welcome back. Israel has said that it has killed the leader of Hamas today. He was responsible for planning the October 7th attacks, among other things.
NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the latest, starting with an update on the situation in Gaza.
A Gaza health ministry official says at least 28 Palestinians are dead after an Israeli strike on a shelter. The Israeli military says the strike targeted terrorists who operated from the shelter. Israel also confirmed that it has killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. This comes after a Gaza operation which targeted 3 terrorists. Israel's military published this statement, saying Yahya Sinwar was eliminated after hiding for the past year behind the civilian population of Gaza. Shortly before the confirmation, Congressman Jared Moskowitz said this about the possibility of Sinwar being dead.
This would be a major victory for Israel and a victory for the world. Yahya Sinwar is the Osama bin Laden of his time. He is solely responsible for the attacks of October 7th.
Sinwar was the chief architect of the October 7th attacks on Israel. Here's what an analyst from the UK said about the future of the conflict after Sinwar's death.
It would very much increase the chances of a ceasefire because Israel's prime goal, declared goal, and actual goal was to take out the leadership of Hamas.
Sinwar was named the leader of Hamas after the assassination of former leader Ismail Haniyeh. Haniyeh had been killed in Tehran in August. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
Joining us now to discuss is retired Navy captain and national security analyst Armin Kurdian. Armin, it's great to see you. The Israel Defense Force ran the DNA and have confirmed they have killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. First off, Armin, can you summarize who Sinwar was and what's the significance of his death?
So, good afternoon. Sinwar, definitely one of Hamas's central leaders, one of the founders of basically been with Hamas since the beginning. One of the instigators and major planners, masterminds of the October 7th attacks, a strongman, if you will, someone who was, quote, respected within the Hamas organizational leadership, someone with the credibility to basically direct and manage the operations and essentially some of the glue holding Hamas together. That glue is now gone. It'll be very interesting to see if anybody wants to step into those shoes and come in to that position. Hamas still has a couple of leaders who are living the life of luxury in Qatar. And if you remember, Ismail, who was visiting Iran a few months ago, came out of Qatar, went to visit Iran, and got himself blown up. So I venture to guess that those two remaining masterminds or leaders of Hamas are going to be staying in Qatar, and it's going to be interesting to see what level of leadership and authority and control they can continue to maintain over Hamas.
Yes, and I'd be interested in hearing you compare and contrast those two leaders, specifically within the Hamas inner circle, and how the IDF was able to pursue the two. The one in Tehran, I mean, I think there'll be a movie thriller made of that potentially one day, but curious of your perspectives.
Israel is basically rewriting the book on intelligence operations and coordinating that with military operations. What they've been able to do, getting this number of leaders and senior officials, both in Hezbollah and in Hamas, in such a short span of time, when you compare and contrast that to the U.S. efforts to try to take out ISIS leadership or leadership of the Fedayeen in an Operation Iraqi Freedom, or members of Al Qaeda, how it's taken years upon years to find some of these senior folks, and Israel is basically doing it literally almost on a weekly basis. Granted, the area and territory they need to be searching is smaller, but very densely populated. So following these individuals through these multiple needles in a haystack is truly, truly amazing. These individuals, these folks, various level of control and various measures of expertise. So, whether it's a question of directing military operations, directing political operations, or perhaps of a spiritual guidance, as Hassan Nasrallah was in Hezbollah, each of them performed a different function. The only possible drawback of taking out this many leaders at one time is there a danger of Hamas or Hezbollah perhaps fracturing to the point where a senior individual is incapable of controlling and managing these organizations to the point where they wouldn't be able to surrender even if they wanted to?
Yes, let's explore that a little bit more. There's a power vacuum. So what will the loss of Sinoir be to the impact on Hamas's ability to keep fighting? And you mentioned potentially it could splinter into multiple forces. Could you explore that a little bit more?
Well, I think at the federated level, what you'll see is they'll probably have more decentralized command and control. So there's probably orders going out to the various Hamas factions saying, okay, if you can conduct operations against Israel, do so at your when the opportunity presents itself. If you have weapons and you have rockets, try to get them out when you can. It's going to become very much harder to coordinate. Israel is doing a much better job of finding, fixing, and destroying some of these mobile targets very fast. So it's a good chance they have probably a lot of drones in the air. I am very hopeful, and I would expect that the U.S. is probably providing intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance information, photography, whether it's from high altitude or from space, on these potential movements, and broadcasting that to Israel for them to actually go out and take it out. These coordinated efforts, you have to believe they have to be getting some measure of help from the United States in that sense. We've already been providing kinetic support in defense of the Israeli homeland. It's not far-fetched to imagine that we're providing that kind of support as well and that kind of measure of coordination. So despite what we're hearing from a diplomatic standpoint at the top levels, the folks that are, so to speak, in the trenches, the generals, the colonels, and the intelligence analysts seem to be working very, very well at a much lower level towards a common goal of protecting Israel and defending the homeland against these terrorist organizations.
Fascinating, Armin. And as we pivot a little bit and start looking toward the long term, American kids see professional athletes, movie stars, doctors, lawyers, military personnel such as yourself as role models. Palestinian children specifically in these times, the guys with the money, the bling, the influence, these are the jihadists. And Sinoir and Hinyani both grew up in devastated refugee camps. They were raised on anger toward Israel. So what is Israel doing, or what should they be doing, to prevent a new generation of Sinoir and Hinyanis?
It's a very tough question to answer. There's a lot of religious fervor, and frankly, it all goes back to 1978 and the fall of the Shah of Iran and the Islamic Revolution of Iran, which is probably this country's greatest foreign policy failure in the post-World War II era. So much, or virtually everything that you're seeing happening in the Middle East, is a fallout of what has happened there, this fervor and the rest of the proxies that are out there. So long as those religious figures are out there and able to continue to make this case against Israel from a religious standpoint, destruction of Israel. What Israel is doing, you see some of the media saying, oh, Israel is just creating the next generation of terrorists. I don't really buy that, because if it wasn't for Israel, bombing Gaza or attacking Beirut to destroy these leaders, they would just have a different reason. I mean, we were at peace on October 6th on 2023. So you have to imagine it's a big, major psychological operation that'll have to occur over a long period of time. At some point, the Palestinians are going to need a Nixon going to China moment, where one of their senior leaders, one of their respected individuals, finally says, okay, this is enough and let's move forward. If they do that, they could get the strategic, political, or diplomatic initiative and maybe force Israel's hand a little bit to come to a peaceful resolution. But at the same time, it's going to require an isolation from what Iran has been doing in terms of funding a lot of these proxies in the Middle East, and also basically breaking that bond between the religious theocracy of Iran and what it's been doing in that Middle East. Only then could you possibly see a lasting peace between Israel and the Palestinians.
Let's explore that a little further. It's very interesting. Israel did vaccinate almost the entire Palestinian society of children when there was a single polio outbreak during the recent ceasefire. You mentioned this sort of Nixon and China moment. In the modern society with social media, there are social programs, what other things could you imagine that would be that first step toward breaking that cycle? I mean, if you could explore that a little bit further, I think that would be great.
Sure. Let's start with looking at all the money that has gone to Hamas and the Gaza Strip, and also Hezbollah. How many billions of dollars have come from Iran that have gone to basically fund these organizations and the Houthi rebels? What if all that money had gone instead to more hospitals, more infrastructure, more hope, more benefit, more manufacturing, more jobs, more opportunity for young Palestinian men to actually experience, the joys and the benefits of capitalism and bringing themselves up. This lack of opportunity that you see at that level is, I think, a big reason why we're experiencing a lot of what we are right now. It's going to require, it can't just be the United States coming in saying, let's all be friends. It has to be very, very organic and deep, coming up from schools and from media. And you talk about social media. Look what's happening here in the United States. I mean, even our country isn't immune to the indoctrination or the easy influence of people saying Israel's a terrible country, let's all support Hamas, because of the lack of critical thinking that is taught in this nation. The struggle for education, the struggle at the earliest level, stage of development, is basically the struggle for the future. The battles and the wars that are being fought between the grown adults, between Israel and Iran and the rest of their proxies, is an outcome and a symptom of what has transpired or failed to transpire in the early development of a lot of individuals. Put it another way, peace is cheap. Peace is not expensive. Peace has opportunity. War is very expensive. War kills people. It is not in the benefit of the world for there to be a war. But when you fail at an early level, war can be the outcome. So I'm a systems engineer. Everything has an effect on everything else around it. So there's not one single answer to this problem.
Indeed, perhaps the flourishing Muslims in Israel could play a part in that olive branch. I want to move over to the Houthis. You mentioned the Red Sea. The U.S. deployed B-2 stealth bombers to take out 5 underground weapons facilities. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said the strikes were aimed at reducing Houthi military capabilities as well as protecting U.S. forces. The Houthis are pledging a response. So how is this going to play out?
Well, those B-2 bombers are the only aircraft in the U.S. arsenal capable of carrying the massive ordnance penetrator. You heard General Ryder talking about it earlier today, and he kind of stole my thunder because I was going to mention it. But this is a weapon that weighs well over 12 tons. It's a GPS-guided weapon capable of punching through, the exact number is classified, but probably dozens of meters of rock and dirt to get at some of these targets that are underneath the ground. So that is absolutely critical because that's where they're storing a lot of these weapons. And perhaps it is a message to Iran saying, okay, we got these weapon storage bunkers. We can get your nuclear infrastructure in Iran. This is another aspect that where I believe we've done a decent job in getting the international community to unite against the Houthi threat, because now you have tankers and cargo ships that are having to go around the Horn of Africa, taking weeks longer. They got to burn more fuel. This makes life more expensive. Like we just said, war is expensive, peace is cheap. So I'm glad that we did it. I think there needs to be more of that. Because of the international aspect of this, I think it would behoove Israel to continue to focus on Hezbollah and Hamas, their nearest threats. Let the international community, if we could just come together and be a lot more decisive to take these Houthi rebels out, because they're basically not really rebels against the government of Yemen anymore. They're basically a proxy doing Iran's bidding against the Red Sea. Why attack shipping in the Red Sea if they're against the Yemeni government? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. So they've become an international threat and they need to be removed, just like we took out ISIS.
Armin, I could literally talk to you all day about this topic. There's so much nuance and layers to it. Real quickly, as we finish up, I'm already over time, but I want to get this one last one in. Drawing the U.S. into a hot war, which we now are, we've deployed our B-2 stealth bombers. It seems like exactly what the Chinese regime wants as they move their chess pieces around the board. Can you comment?
Certainly. The longer you let this war, these hostilities continue in the Middle East and with the Houthi rebels, the more of these precision weapons that we need to expend that are very expensive to build and take a long time to build. Speed in a conflict is absolutely vital. And your point is absolutely spot on. China's buying over $4 billion of Iranian oil every year. They're funding their regime. China is planning their movements in the far East, in the Pacific Rim. So the fact that we're heads down in the Middle East right now using a lot of these precision weapons is a fact that is not lost on China. And the longer this goes, China becomes stronger. They're spitting out a lot of precision weapons a lot faster than we can build them. So they could very well be building to something. And we cannot lose sight of that either.
We always appreciate your analysis. Retired Navy Captain and National Security Analyst Armin Kurdian. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Today, Biden said he will speak soon with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu about how to return hostages and end the war. President Biden said Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar's death marks a moment of relief for Israelis and offers the chance for a future in Gaza without the militant group in power. He said, quote, Yahya Sinwar was an insurmountable obstacle to achieving all of those goals. That obstacle no longer exists, but much work remains before. Biden said in a statement, I will soon be speaking with the Prime Minister Netanyahu and other Israeli leaders to congratulate them to discuss the pathway for bringing the hostages home to their families and for ending this war once and for all, which has caused so much devastation to the innocent.
Vice President Harris is rallying in Wisconsin now, and here's what she had to say about the Hamas leader's death.
Today, Israel confirmed that Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, is dead, and justice has been served. And the United States, Israel, and the entire world are better off as a result. Sinwar was responsible for the killing of thousands of innocent people, including the victims of October 7 and hostages killed in Gaza. He had American blood on his hands. Today, I can only hope that the families of the victims of Hamas feel a sense and measure of relief. Sinwar was the mastermind of October 7, the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. A terrorist attack that killed 1,200 innocent people and included horrific sexual violence and more than 250 hostages taken into Gaza, including 7 Americans, living and deceased, who remain in captivity. A terrorist attack that triggered a devastating war in Gaza, a war that has led to unconscionable suffering of many innocent Palestinians and greater instability throughout the Middle East. In the past year, American Special Operations and intelligence personnel have worked closely with their Israeli counterparts to locate and track Sinoir and other Hamas leaders. And I commend their work. And I will say, to any terrorist who kills Americans, threatens the American people, or threatens our troops or our interests, know this: we will always bring you to justice. Israel has a right to defend itself, and the threat Hamas poses to Israel must be eliminated. Today, there is clear progress toward that goal. Hamas is decimated, and its leadership is eliminated. This moment gives us an opportunity to finally end the war in Gaza. And it must end such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination. And it is time for the day after to begin, without Hamas in power. We will not give up on these goals, and I will always work to create a future of peace, dignity, and security for all. I thank you all.
Is the U.S. asking?
Thank you.
Is the U.S. asking Israel to end the war now, Madam Vice President?
The former head of the Interrogation Department of Israel's Shin Bet said last year that he actually interrogated the Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar for over 180 hours in an Israeli prison. Michael Kubi told Reuters in an interview that Sinwar was the most cruel man he had ever met.
He described the Hamas leader as a ruthless and rational man with murderous eyes, and that Sinwar was fully committed to destroying Israel and killing Jews.
For him, it doesn't matter if it is a boy, a child, a woman, or any woman. He wants to kill Jews, by machete. That was his dream. He told me that the best is to kill them by machete. That was during the interrogation.
Kubi sat for hours interrogating Sinwar and said he knew him better than his mother. Kubi described how Sinwar killed 3 men using a razor during his time in an Israeli prison.
He said he believes Sinwar should never have been freed under a deal to release a captive soldier. Coming up, early voting has kicked off in North Carolina as the state continues to recover from Hurricane Helene. Stay tuned for that after this break.
What do you do when your tire goes flat and there's no air anywhere? You reach for Bullseye Pro, the smarter, faster, hands-free way to fill it up with air. Bullseye Pro is equipped with a rechargeable lithium-ion power plant. So fast and so convenient. It's like the power of an air compressor in the palm of your hand. Look, you can inflate all 4 tires on a single charge. It has a built-in smart pressure digital sensor that gauges and automatically stops when the set tire pressure is reached. Easily inflate pool toys, exercise balls, and more. Call or go online now and get the complete Bullseye Pro inflation system for the factory direct price of just $79.99. Plus, we'll ship your entire order free, and we'll give you a 50% discount on a second one. Order now.
To order, call 1-800-984-7221. That's 1-800-984-7221, or go to getbullseyepro.com.
Come to the Mathis Design Studio, the premier destination for designer furniture. See the latest trends from top brands with heirloom quality pieces for every room in your house. Whether you're redecorating a single room or furnishing an entire home, we have the styles you'll love. Plus, enjoy fast, complimentary delivery. Visit us now for exclusive discounts and let us help make your dream home a reality for less than you ever imagined at the Mathis Design Studio.
for those who cherish tradition and stand for the values that built this great nation. Republican Red Winery proudly embodies the spirit of American greatness. Let's raise a glass to forging our own future, building a bigger, better, and stronger America. The best is yet to come.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming. Please call or go online now. With your gift of $19 a month, we'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
Welcome back. Early in-person voting began statewide today in the presidential battleground of North Carolina, including in the mountainous areas where thousands of potential voters still lack power and clean running water after Hurricane Helene's epic flooding.
That's right. Helene's arrival 3 weeks ago in the southeast decimated remote towns throughout the Appalachia and killed at least 246 people, with little over half of the storm-related deaths in North Carolina. It was the deadliest hurricane to hit the U.S. mainland since Katrina, which was back in 2005.
Yes, but despite the catastrophic damage, all but 4 of the 80 sites in the 25 western counties hardest hit by the storm were set to open Thursday for the 17-day early voting period.
And in Asheville, North Carolina, people stood in line in cold air to cast their ballots, even as they or their neighbors were still waiting on drinkable water to return and for businesses to reopen.
It is hard to even really think about voting for some people, because some people, if they've lost their entire house or family members or something like that, then I'm sure voting is one of the last things on their mind.
No, I'm really devoted to cast my vote, but I think a lot of people feel that way. But obviously, anytime you have something this cataclysmic, it's going to disrupt people's lives. They're trying to figure out how to flush their toilets and take care of basic needs. There's so many people with health care needs that it's not understood how much help they need in a crisis like this. But be that as it may, I think at least in my neighborhood, there's a widespread understanding of the importance of this election and how important it is to vote.
Coming up, Germany fighting back against China's wind energy dominance, announcing measures to make itself less dependent. Stay tuned for that after this break.
NATOPath were driven to improve the lives of people by providing highly effective supplements that solve common health problems and support optimal health. This is what being on the path is all about.
Visit getnativepath.com/NTD for your special offer.
The 7th NTD International Piano Competition will take place at the Kaufman Music Center in New York City. Pianists from around the world will come together to revive the great piano masterpieces. Join us on this uplifting journey. The semifinals, finals, and the winner's concert will be open to audiences and live streamed from October 17th to the 19th. Get tickets now at 212-501-3330.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I received 2 stents in my arteries, stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. I have met so many survivors. Each of them tells a story that can be so helpful to women out there.
Everything was pretty good. It was a very happy life. I was given the diagnosis that I had peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is basically a pregnancy-induced heart failure. They told me my only chance was a heart transplant.
And the American Heart Association helped make that possible. Their research helped save me.
I think everyone should support the American Heart Association. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR, the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. You can be part of that very important work that the American Heart Association is doing to save lives everywhere. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save lives.
I'm grateful for just every day that I get with my children. I am very thankful for the American Heart Association.
Heart disease is America's #1 killer, and your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love. Listen to your heart. The only reason I'm here today is because I did. So please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now. Join me as a monthly donor today and help save even more lives.
When they learn something new and you can just see in their faces, it's such an incredible moment. It's those moments that are my favorite.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Fiona G.
I'm Carrie Dunst.
President Biden says he will soon speak with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about returning hostages and ending the war in Gaza.
Vice President Kamala Harris, while rallying in Wisconsin, also comments on the news of the Hamas leader's death.
Israel says it has killed the leader of Hamas. He was responsible for planning the October 7th attacks. What the future of the war looks like now after his death.
British singer and former member of One Direction dies in Argentina at 31 years old. What we know so far about the former boy band star's death.
Bitcoin prices soared over a bogus post on X that popped up on the Securities and Exchange Commission's account. Now, one of the accused account hackers has been arrested.
Germany fighting back against China's wind energy dominance, announcing measures to make itself less dependent.
The European Central Bank cuts interest rates for the third time this year. We have more on the change in focus from inflation to the economy.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Big news day for the Middle East today, Carrie. Israel has said that it killed the leader of Hamas today. Now, he was responsible for planning the October 7th attacks, among other things.
Yes, NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the latest, starting with an update on the situation in Gaza.
A Gaza health ministry official says at least 28 Palestinians are dead after an Israeli strike on a shelter. The Israeli military says the strike targeted terrorists who operated from the shelter. Israel also confirmed that it has killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. This comes after a Gaza operation which targeted 3 terrorists. Israel's military published this statement, saying Yahya Sinwar was eliminated after hiding for the past year behind the civilian population of Gaza. Shortly before the confirmation, Congressman Jared Moskowitz said this about the possibility of Sinwar being dead.
This would be a major victory for Israel and a victory for the world. Yahya Sinwar is the Osama bin Laden of his time. He is solely responsible for the attacks of October 7th.
Sinwar was the chief architect of the October 7th attacks on Israel. Here's what an analyst from the UK said about the future of the conflict after Sinwar's death.
It would very much increase the chances of a ceasefire because Israel's prime goal, declared goal, and actual goal was to take out the leadership of Hamas.
Sinwar was named the leader of Hamas after the assassination of former leader Ismail Haniyeh. Haniyeh had been killed in Tehran in August. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Today, Biden said he will speak soon with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu about how to return hostages and end the war. President Biden said Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar's death marks a moment of relief for Israelis and offers the chance for a future in Gaza without the militant group in power. He said, quote, Yahya Sinwar was an insurmountable obstacle to achieving all of those goals. That obstacle no longer exists, but much more work remains before us. Biden also said, I will soon be speaking with Prime Minister Netanyahu and other Israeli leaders to congratulate them, to discuss the pathway for bringing the hostages home to their families, and for ending this war once and for all, which has caused so much devastation to the innocent people.
Vice President Harris is rallying in Wisconsin, and here's what she said about the Hamas leader's death.
Today, Israel confirmed that Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, is dead, and justice has been served. And the United States, Israel, and the entire world are better off as a result. Sinwar was responsible for the killing of thousands of innocent people, including the victims of October 7 and hostages killed in Gaza. He had American blood on his hands. Today, I can only hope that the families of the victims of Hamas feel a sense and measure of relief. Sinwar was the mastermind of October 7, the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. A terrorist attack that killed 1,200 innocent people and included horrific sexual violence and more than 250 hostages taken into Gaza, including 7 Americans, living and deceased, who remain in captivity. A terrorist attack that triggered a devastating war in Gaza, a war that has led to unconscionable suffering of many innocent Palestinians and greater instability throughout the Middle East. In the past year, American Special Operations and intelligence personnel have worked closely with their Israeli counterparts to locate and track Sinwar and other Hamas leaders. And I commend their work. And I will say, to any terrorist who kills Americans, threatens the American people, or threatens our troops or our interests, know this, we will always bring you to justice. Israel has a right to defend itself, and the threat Hamas poses to Israel must be eliminated. Today, there is clear progress toward that goal. Hamas is decimated, and its leadership is eliminated. This moment gives us an opportunity to finally end the war in Gaza. And it must end such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination. And it is time for the day after to begin, without Hamas in power. We will not give up on these goals, and I will always work to create a future of peace, dignity, and security for all. I thank you all.
Is the U.S. asking Israel to end the war now, Madam Vice President?
Harris will be in Wisconsin all day today. Her campaign says she will rally across the state in Milwaukee, La Crosse, and Green Bay. This comes as early voting begins in this key swing state. Businessman and television personality Mark Cuban will be joining her there. Still staying on the topic of the Middle East, the former head of the Interrogation Department of Israel's Shin Bet said last year that he had interrogated Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar for 180 hours in an Israeli prison. I think it's important to note here, for those who may not know, Yahya Sinwar was actually imprisoned in Israeli jails for about 22 years before being released. Now, Michael Kubi told Reuters in an interview that Sinwar was the most cruel man he had ever met.
Yes, he describes the Hamas leader as a ruthless yet rational man with murderous eyes, and that Sinwar was fully committed to destroying Israel and killing Jews.
He has been For him, it doesn't matter if it is a boy, a child, a woman, or any woman. He want to kill Jews, by machete. That was his dream. He told me that the best is to kill them by machete. That was during the interrogation.
Kubi sat for hours interrogating Sinoir and said he knew him better than his own mother. Kubi described how Sinoir killed 3 men using a razor during his time in an Israeli prison.
He said he believes Sinoir should never have been freed under a deal to release a captive soldier.
President Donald Trump will speak in New York tonight. Trump will address the annual Al Smith Dinner in New York this evening. It's a charity dinner that often draws major politicians. It's become a tradition for presidential candidates ever since Nixon and John F. Kennedy appeared together in 1960. Both presidential candidates were invited, but Vice President Kamala Harris is not expected to attend as she's busy campaigning in Wisconsin. Early in-person voting began statewide today in the presidential battleground of North Carolina, including in the mountainous areas where thousands of potential voters still lack power and clean running water after Hurricane Helene's epic flooding.
That's right. Helene's arrival 3 weeks ago in the southeast decimated remote towns throughout Appalachia and killed at least 246 people, with a little over half of the storm-related deaths in North Carolina. It was the deadliest hurricane to hit the U.S. mainland since Katrina, which was back in 2005.
But despite the catastrophic damage, all but 4 of the 80 sites in the 25 western counties hardest hit by the storm were set to open Thursday for the 17-day early voting period.
That's right. And in Asheville, North Carolina, people actually stood in line in cold air to cast their ballots, even as they or their neighbors were still waiting on drinkable water to return and for businesses to reopen.
It is hard to even really think about voting for some people, because some people, if they've lost their entire house or family members or something like that, then I'm sure voting is one of the last things on their mind.
No, I'm really devoted to cast my vote, but I think a lot of people feel that way. But obviously, anytime you have something this cataclysmic, it's going to disrupt people's lives. They're trying to figure out how to flush their toilets and take care of basic needs. There's so many people with health care needs that it's not understood how much help they need in a crisis like this. But be that as it may, I think at least in my neighborhood, there's a widespread understanding of the importance of this election and how important it is to vote.
And in more voting news, a federal judge has blocked an effort by Alabama to remove non-citizens from its voter rolls. The judge said yesterday that changing the voting system less than 90 days before an election is illegal. Alabama Northern District Judge Anna Manasco ruled that federal law has given states a hard deadline of 90 days for decades. She says Alabama Secretary of State Wes Allen blew the deadline and that he announced the removal of ineligible voters 84 days before the general election. She ordered Alabama to halt its efforts to remove such voters. Her order also requires Alabama to help counties restore the voting status of those removed. The Justice Department sued Alabama in September. It alleged the state violated the 90-day quiet period in the National Voter Registration Act.
Up next, Germany is fighting back against China's wind energy dominance. Find out how it plans to make itself less dependent.
The Biden administration cancels billions more in student loans for public workers. Now nearly 5 million borrowers are cleared from $175 billion in debt. We'll have that and more after this break.
One in 5 children worldwide are faced with the reality of living without food. No family dinners, no special treats, not enough energy to play. All around the world, hunger is affecting children's physical and mental health. Toddlers are suffering from acute malnutrition, which stunts their growth. kids are forced to drop out of school so they can help support their families. Conflict, inflation, and climate have ignited the worst famine in our lifetime. And we are fed up. Fed up that hunger devours dreams. Fed up that hunger destroys joy. Fed up with the fact that hunger eats childhood. Help us feed the futures of children all over the world by visiting givetosave.org. For as little as $10 a month, you can join Save the Children as we support children and families in desperate need of our help. Now is the time to get fed up and give back. When you join the cause, your $10 monthly donation can help communities in need of life-saving treatments and nutrients, prevent children from dropping out of school, support our work with communities and governments to help children go from short-term surviving to long-term thriving. And now, thanks to special government grants, every dollar you give can multiply up to 10 times the impact. That means more food, water, medicine, and help for kids around the world. You'll also receive a free tote bag to share your support for children in need. Having your childhood eaten away by hunger is unimaginable. Get fed up. Call us now or visit givetosave.org today.
A performance that truly matters. For each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. See it at least once in your lifetime. Shen Yun. Get tickets now at shenyun.com.
Will radical lies determine your child's future, or will timeless truths? Fathom the Good equips children with wisdom against the world. Our homeschool curriculum teaches high schoolers to think critically. We provide primary texts, original content, reasoning tools, and mentoring videos to help them transform America. Teach your children to navigate the world's woke confusion. Teach them to fathom the good.
Welcome back. For today's Business Matters, we have Don Ma here with us. Don, always good to see you.
Yeah, always great to see you guys, of course.
Good to see you, Don. What have you got for us today?
All right, let me start off with student loans, actually. So President Joe Biden has approved another $4.5 billion student debt relief. This latest round impacts more than 60,000 public sector workers, including teachers, nurses, and firefighters. Now, the borrowers qualify for debt relief through the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And it was created nearly 2 decades ago, but the Biden administration has expanded it to make it easier to qualify. So since taking office, Biden has canceled more than $175 billion of debt for nearly 5 million people, and that's about 11% of all outstanding federal student loan debt. Now, several of Biden's other efforts to forgive student loans were struck down or are tied up in litigation. An Alabama man has been arrested for his role in hacking into the Securities and Exchange Commission's X account. He posted a message on the account that spiked the price of Bitcoin. Prosecutors say Eric Council Jr. reassigned the cell number linked to the account and shared the access code with a co-conspirator. The Justice Department says Bitcoin prices soared to more than $1,000 because of a bogus post. Council has been charged with conspiracy to commit aggravated identity theft and access device fraud. Paints and coatings maker PPG Industries said today it would lay off 1,800 employees in the United States and Europe and close various facilities as part of its cost reduction program. PPG expects yearly pre-tax savings of about $175 million once the program is in place. PPG also announced it will sell its architectural coatings business in the US and Canada to American industrial partners for about $550 million. And Netflix hit play on its shares and they climbed to an all-new time high. but investors now fear the growth may be headed for a rewind. Last month, shares reached nearly $700. That's an almost 340% rise from a 2022 low. The strong growth came from a password-sharing crackdown and new ad-supported subscription. Netflix shares have since edged down and are in the red today, and the company is expected to report a revenue growth slowdown in the coming quarters. Now, TSMC smashed forecasts with a 54% jump in quarterly profit. The chipmaker reported today a net profit of about $10.1 billion for the period ended September 30th. And that's its highest for any quarter and well above analysts' forecast. TSMC said revenue rose 36% year-on-year to $23.5 billion. The world's largest contract chipmaker credited soaring demand for chips used in artificial intelligence. It's the dominant producer of advanced silicon used in AI applications with customers including Apple and Nvidia. And Americans looks to be still opening their wallets despite years of elevated inflation. According to fresh government data, spending at U.S. retailers climbed 0.4% in September from the prior month. The largest increase was seen at specialty stores, clothing stores, and at health and personal care shops. Sales at bars and restaurants also rose 1% last month. Meanwhile, sales of electronics and appliances plunged 3% from August. Consumer spending makes up about 70% of the U.S. economy. Retail sales are a sizable chunk of that. And the federal government's bet on AI to fight financial crimes appear to be paying off. New estimates show machine learning AI helped the U.S. Treasury Department sift through massive amounts of data and recover $1 billion worth of check fraud in fiscal year 2024 alone. That's nearly triple what the Treasury recovered in the previous fiscal year. The Treasury Department credited AI with helping officials prevent and recover more than $4 billion worth of fraud overall for the 2024 fiscal year. U.S. officials started using AI to detect financial crimes in late 2022, and the goal is to protect taxpayer money against fraud, which spiked during the pandemic as the federal government scrambled to disperse emergency aid to consumers and businesses. The Treasury is not using generative AI, but machine learning. And that's a subset of AI that excels at analyzing vast amounts of data and making decisions and predictions based on what it has learned. The European Central Bank has cut interest rates for the third time this year. It said that inflation in the Eurozone was increasingly under control, but it was less optimistic on the outlook of the bloc's overall economy.
Have we broken the neck of inflation? Not yet. Are we in the process of breaking that neck? Yes.
The ECB cut its deposit rate by 25 basis points to 3.25%. This first back-to-back rate cut in a decade marks a shift in focus for the Eurozone Central Bank. It has shifted from bringing down inflation to protecting economic growth, which has lagged far behind the U.S. in recent years.
The incoming information suggests that economic activity has been somewhat weaker than expected. While industrial production has been particularly volatile over the summer months, surveys indicate that manufacturing has continued to contract. For services, surveys show an uptick in August, likely supported by a strong summer tourism season, but the latest data point to more sluggish growth. Businesses are expanding their investment only slowly, while housing investment continues to fall.
ECB President Christine Lagarde said that at this point, the bank is not expecting a recession and is still working on the assumption that the economy could stage a soft landing. Money markets are anticipating 3 more reductions through next March. Germany is taking action against China's wind energy dominance. It's announcing measures to make itself less dependent on that. Here's more.
Germany is fighting back against China's wind energy dominance. Minister for Economic Affairs Robert Habeck says, quote, "We have a strong wind industry in Germany and Europe, and that we must continue to improve the framework conditions so that this industry remains competitive." The plan includes government financial backing, cybersecurity requirements, and reducing dependency on China. China is by far the world's biggest producer of wind energy, with plans for substantial growth every year. Germany is in a distant third place behind the United States. Currently, over 90% of a key component, permanent magnets, come from China. These magnets are made from rare earth minerals. China has the world's largest rare earth mineral reserves, as well as the will to pollute the environment when mining them. In April, the European Commission started investigating whether Chinese firms are receiving unfair subsidies. Germany's solar industry has already been hurt by an influx of cheap Chinese panels. The country is more aware of China's trade practices.
And next, to the trade battle between Europe and China. Germany's finance minister voiced concerns yesterday over cars built in China, saying they could no longer be competitive in their home market after being charged high European Union taxes. That's after the European Union passed a tariff hike on Chinese electric vehicles 2 weeks ago. Although Germany voted nay, the Council still collected enough support from the bloc. The European Union wants to level the playing field for cars imported from China and cars that are made in Europe. But the decision puts Germany, the world's biggest automaker, in an awkward position. Many German cars are assembled in China. The German Economic Institute last year said more and more German automakers have relocated their production lines to China over the past few years. The German finance minister stressed that German car makers had little to fear from their Chinese counterparts.
I don't want to be impolite, but the European, and especially the German car industry, has little to fear from Chinese products. The best cars are built in Germany. In other words, German engineering products which were built in China with electric engines we would love to have are being taxed in a way when they enter Europe where they are possibly no longer competitive. That's what I call self-inflicted damage.
Germany's auto sector is a key industry to the country's economy. Before the EU and Beijing find a better solution, the new EU tariff on China will take effect at the end of this month, and it's expected to last 5 years. Next, we have some news from China's real estate sector. The country says it's doubling down on support for developers and home buyers and aims to restore this long-battered sector. Beijing just introduced a few stimulus measures earlier today. What are they and how is the market responding to the policies? Let's take a look.
At a news conference Thursday in Beijing, Housing Minister Ni Hong set out a raft of new measures. He says the government will expand a so-called white list to $562 billion by year-end. That's the list of housing projects that can get financing to ensure they can be finished and delivered to buyers. There are no official estimates on the number of homes pre-sold but unfinished in the country. However, one report by Japanese bank Nomura put the number at 20 million. Thursday also saw a pledge to accelerate the redevelopment of cities, with 1 million urban villages included in the plans. Ni said people being resettled as part of the projects would help to fill up the existing stock of empty homes. It's all just the latest in a series of steps to support the sector, which has been in crisis since 2021. That has seen big developers struggle with their debts and sparked a long downward spiral in home prices. However, markets were unimpressed by Thursday's news, with China's real estate index tumbling nearly 8%. Traders said the moves weren't dramatic enough to lift the mood.
Building masterpieces, one Lego at a time. 15 of the world's most talented Lego artists have descended on Denmark to showcase their skills. The city of Billund is the home of the Lego brick. Every year, the Lego house invites builders for its annual Masterpiece Gallery exhibit. The designers are so-called AFOLS, which stands for Adult Fans of Legos. The company says that 1/4 of visitors to Lego House are actually adults who visit with no children. All right, quickly before we go here, S&P 500 and NASDAQ finished largely unchanged today, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average ended higher today. Its 4th record close in the last 5 sessions, And Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, which I mentioned earlier at the beginning, the world's largest contract chip maker, beat market estimates for profit. And the chip maker's US listed shares soared while TSMC customer NVIDIA also gained. And streaming video giant Netflix picked up 5.1 million subscribers in the third quarter. And that topped Wall Street estimates by more than 1 million users. And that's all the stories we have for you today on Business Matters. Back to you guys, Carrie, Fiona.
Thanks for that, Don. That story about the Lego house is fascinating.
Yeah, it's fun. I didn't know that so many adults went there every year.
Yeah, I can just imagine like these artists building like incredible structures out of thousands and thousands of Legos. It's extremely time consuming, I would imagine, but I think it's worth it when visitors see their creations and just how impressive they are.
I know, and just in a blink of an eye, you can also bring it back down. That's the beauty of Legos. You can build them up and then you can put them away. With parents with kids certainly know that. So.
Yeah, there's probably a metaphor in there somewhere.
Hopefully not by accident.
Indeed. All right, Tom, we'll see you here tomorrow. Thank you.
Yep.
When we come back, British singer and former member of One Direction dies in Argentina at only 31 years old. What we know so far about the former boy band star's death. Please stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. You may know me from my many years on television. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I felt this slight pressure on my chest, just slight. I thought, oh, it's nothing, it'll go away. I didn't get it. I did not get it. But a few days later, while shopping at a boutique, that pressure returned, much stronger. It felt like an elephant pressing on my chest. I had a 90% blockage in my main artery and a 75% blockage in the adjacent artery. I was rushed into surgery where I received 2 stents in my arteries. Stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. That's why I'm in front of you today, asking you to join me in supporting the American Heart Association by becoming a monthly donor. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR, the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. I'm so grateful to the American Heart Association. Their research helped save my life. I can enjoy life with my children, my grandchildren, and my friends. Heart disease is America's #1 killer. And your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save lives. Please, listen to your heart. The only reason I'm here today is because I did. So please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now. Join me as a monthly donor today and help save even more lives. Thank you.
The 7th NTD International Piano Competition will take place at the Kaufman Music Center in New York City. Pianists from around the world will come together to revive the great piano masterpieces. Join us on this uplifting journey. The semifinals, finals, and the winner's concert will be open to audiences and live streamed from October 17th to the 19th. Get tickets now at 212-501-3330.
Come to the Mathis Design Studio, the premier destination for designer furniture. See the latest trends from top brands with heirloom quality pieces for every room in your house. Whether you're redecorating a single room or furnishing an entire home, we have the styles you'll love. Plus, enjoy fast, complimentary delivery. Visit us now for exclusive discounts and let us help make your dream home a reality for less than you ever imagined at the Mathis Design Studio.
Thanks for staying with us. Some sad news. Liam Payne, former member of the boy band One Direction, has died at the age of 31.
Police say the British singer fell from his third-floor balcony at a hotel in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Here's what we know so far.
In a series of Snapchat videos, 31-year-old former One Direction star Liam Payne can be seen in Argentina addressing his fans.
Good morning, everybody.
Today, we ride. We're going to ride some horses.
These are thought to be the last videos of Lee and Payne alive. Police said they were called to the Casa Sur hotel after being told about a man who could be under the effects of drugs and alcohol. When they arrived, the hotel manager told them he heard a loud noise at the back of the hotel. When police went to check it out, they found a body of a man who had fallen from the balcony of his room. According to the Buenos Aires police statement, medics confirmed Payne's death on the spot. Payne previously spoke publicly about having mental health issues and using alcohol to cope with the pressure of fame. Argentinian fans of One Direction gathered outside the hotel to pay tribute to the late singer. They sang the boy band song Infinity and lit candles for Payne.
One Direction meant a lot to me because I was at a stage in my life where I wanted to be part of something bigger, and One Direction and being a Directioner was that for me.
Payne rose to global fame after becoming part of One Direction in 2010, along with Harry Styles, Zayn Malik, Niall Horan, and Louis Tomlinson. The group got its start after finishing in third place on the British version of The X Factor.
It's incredible. I mean, we can't believe we've come over to the US and, we've got fans waiting outside our hotel and stuff. It's unbelievable. We never expected anything like this. The fans have been absolutely incredible. So
One Direction disbanded in 2016, and its members, including Payne, went on to pursue different projects and solo careers. In 2024, Entertainment Weekly ranked One Direction as the third greatest boy band of all time. Earlier this month, Payne attended the Buenos Aires concert of his former bandmate Niall Horan. Last year, he published a video in which he spoke about having given up alcohol. He thanked supporters for sticking with him through difficult times. Payne is survived by a son named Bear. He is 7 years old.
The Los Angeles Archdiocese has agreed to pay over $800 million to resolve sexual abuse claims brought on by over 1,300 alleged victims in the Catholic Church.
Some of the cases date back to the 1940s. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
The Archdiocese of Los Angeles reached an $880 million settlement on Wednesday with 1,353 victims of childhood sexual abuse. Public records reveal that over 300 priests who served in the LA Archdiocese have been accused of sexually abusing minors. The survivors came forward following the passage of California's Assembly Bill 218, which opened a 3-year window to revive civil claims for past sexual abuse involving minors, with some cases dating back to the 1940s. Los Angeles Archbishop Jose Gomez approved the settlement, which will be funded through the reserves, investments, bank financing, and contributions from religious orders and other parties. Gomez said in a statement, "I am so sorry for every one of these incidents from the bottom of my heart." He goes on to say, "My hope is that this settlement will provide some measure of healing for what these men and women have suffered." The Archdiocese of Los Angeles previously paid $740 million in settlements, raising the total payout to over $1.5 billion. Christina Corona, NTD News, Los Angeles.
Now, it takes water to flush a toilet, and tens of thousands of people living in North Carolina have been without that since Hurricane Helene ripped through the state just 3 weeks ago.
Since Helene swallowed mountain towns, damaged water infrastructure, and killed nearly 250 people across the southeast, local governments have been overwhelmed.
Without easy access to water for flushing, people are struggling with where to go to the bathroom and what to do with it. Mishandling fecal matter can lead to cholera, dysentery, and other serious, even fatal diseases. Members of the community are stepping in to preserve dignity and public health, donating their time and money. In Asheville, one person is making and distributing emergency toilets. Others are hauling water from pools and ponds to those in need. Yet another water solution is coming from people who still have water because they have a well. Eric Iverson lives near a well owned by an urban farm that wanted to help after the hurricane. He laid 200-foot lengths of plastic PEX pipe to route the well water to the road for easy public access. Then he added ultraviolet light purification in order to offer drinkable water. Now people driving by can access 2 spouts operated by a foot pedal connected to a chain, touch-free to minimize the spread of germs.
After an event like this, everybody springs into action in heroic mode, wanting to help. It's far in advance of any any governmental body or any NGO coming in because we're already here. And so we know what neighbors need to be taken care of and the ways that we can contribute.
Thousands remain without water as the city is still working to restore water service after its infrastructure was severely damaged in the storm.
Right now we're moving what was the center of the well water being right at the tap. We're moving it to the street to make access more simple for our neighbors. A car can pull right up and fill their jugs with water.
Moving on, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte reiterated the alliance's pledge that Ukraine will be a member of NATO in the future, but he could not say when.
Until then, he said Ukraine can count on NATO's shared unity in the face of the war.
Dear Volodymyr, it is great to have you here at NATO headquarters. I look forward to the day that Ukraine is here as a member of this alliance. And until then, we will continue to do all that we can to ensure Ukraine prevails. This is vital for our shared security.
NATO has declared that Ukraine will become a member, but cannot do so while at war, as this would draw NATO directly into conflict with Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky reminded his allies that some commitments made at the NATO summit in July were still waiting to be fulfilled. He stressed that it is very important to deliver on these swiftly. The European Union is holding a summit in Brussels today. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky presented his 5-point plan, which he says can end the war by next year.
Two major points of the plan are an invitation for Ukraine to join NATO and permission to use long-range weapons to strike targets deep in Russia. Here's Zelensky on those 2 points.
Immediate invitation to Ukraine to join NATO would be decisive. Of course, membership would follow later. Putin just must see that his geopolitical calculations are worthless. And it's realistic to maintain positions on the front within Ukrainian territory while also bringing the war back into Russia so that Russians can feel what war is like.
Zelensky says Russia is currently preparing reinforcements to continue the war, and he says Moscow is getting help from China, North Korea, and Iran. Also today, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin addressed NATO members in Brussels. Austin laid out what the major threats to Western allies are at the moment.
We're tackling a range of key challenges, including bullying from the People's Republic of China and Russia's reckless invasion of Ukraine. But as we do so, we must not lose sight of the threat that ISIS still poses.
He added that combating ISIS remains a top strategic priority for NATO. Austin emphasized that ISIS and other terrorist organizations are still an ongoing threat. That is despite the fact that ISIS was declared partly defeated back in 2017. NATO Chief Mark Rutte says the alliance will continue to support its partners in North Africa and the Middle East.
When we come back, a pair of rescued sea animals make their official debut at the New York Aquarium.
That's right, Carrie. Find out how these newcomers are doing and who they are exactly. Stay tuned.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Abused youth often feel safer on the street. Now, more than ever, that's the most dangerous place of all. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming, and no young person is ever turned away. Please call or go online now with your gift of $19 a month to help a young person. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Your gift will show them they're loved. Homeless young people are afraid and alone with nowhere else to turn.
You want to know that there's somewhere you can go that's safe. So the Covenant House did that for us.
Please call now with your gift of $19 a month. We'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. Please don't wait. Your gift is the lifeline a young person needs now. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org. Thank you for saving precious lives.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
When they learn something new and you can just see in their faces, it's such an incredible moment. It's those moments that are my favorite.
Thanks for staying with us. Brazil is the world's top soybean producer and ships over 1 million tons a week to China. But Brazilians themselves eat so little of it that it's becoming a pricey offering. So why does Brazil keep growing so much soy but eating so little? Here's that story.
At this upscale restaurant in the foodie mecca of Sao Paulo, a novel star ingredient is being served: tofu. Despite being the world's top producer of soybeans, Brazilians eat rather little of it, making soy a pricey niche offering. Sushi Mar's owner Maria Cermelli says there's a prejudice against tofu here. That's in part because most of Brazil's soybeans are grown to be exported to Asia and Europe to fatten up livestock. And 98% of it is genetically modified to withstand the heavy use of herbicide. All of that has added to a stigma in the local market. So, most food companies offering tofu and soy milk to choosy Brazilians rely on expensive parallel farming of non-GMO soybeans, or imported products from as far off as Japan.
It's crazy to think that Brazil, as the largest soy producer in the world, is actually also an importer of soy.
Gus Guadagnini is Good Food Institute's Brazil CEO, a think tank studying the development of meat alternatives.
And that's exactly because the soybean produced in Brazil is being used to feed animals, while when we want to buy non-GMO soy protein to be used in the food industry, they have to import from other countries.
That's pushed up the price of soy you do find here in Brazil. Brazilians making minimum wage would need to fork over a full day's pay for just 250 grams of tofu. All the while, Brazil ships over 1 million tons a week of soybeans to China on average. Brazil is forecast to produce a record 170 million metric tons of soybeans in its next harvest, more than the United States. Agriculture consultancy Agromeris found Brazil was the only major market for foods made with soybeans in decline. But back at Sushi Mar, Cermelli says attitudes towards soy are slowly evolving.
I think this is changing a lot because there are a lot of people adhering to the vegan diet. And so I think that this prejudice is decreasing more and more. And I think that because of this, there is much better quality tofu today.
Okay, today in entertainment news, a future film from 3.5 decades ago and turning an actor into a painter. We have the details in our Hollywood Minute.
Future. I gotta check this out, Doc.
Back to the Future Part 2 is coming back to theaters for its 35th anniversary. The most futuristic film in the time travel trilogy, set in 2015, returns to the big screen on Saturday, October 19th and Monday, October 21st, the date Marty and Doc travel to the future in the movie. More info at fathomevents.com.
I put it on canvas so that I could hold it,
by the throat.
Andre Holland stars in Exhibiting Forgiveness as a talented artist. The paintings in the film are by its writer-director, Titus Kaffar, who worked with Holland to make sure his star looked the part.
I couldn't even figure out how to color in within the lines when I was in kindergarten, so I was bad. We started from below zero, but Titus was patient with me, man, and you know, we worked for about 3 months together, and he gave me a bunch of books to read, and we talked about color theory. We did all kinds of things to try and get to a place where I could believably inhabit this character.
Exhibiting Forgiveness is in theaters Friday.
It's a must for visitors when in Rome. Turn your back to the Trevi Fountain and flip a coin over your shoulder while making a wish. Millions of coins from tourists all over the world are dropped into the water each year, but where does the money go?
An eternal story in the eternal city. If a first-time tourist in Rome wants to make a wish and one day return to the city, all they have to do is throw a coin into the Trevi Fountain. For more than 15 years, the Catholic charity Caritas has been using the average 1.5 million coins collected each year to fund charitable activities.
I love knowing that when you flip a coin, you can help people in need. And in a city as beautiful as Italy, which is a holy city, that deep down we can help our neighbors in that way. With so much need in the world, I find it precious. It is a sign of hope and help, of charity and of joy as well.
The company in charge of collecting the coins is ACEA. It's Rome's energy and water supplier.
The collection of the coins from the fountain is done using some specific tools in order to try to get the coins into the center of the fountain. And with a special pump, we try to suck the coins into that tool, which I will show you later.
These special vacuum pumps to suck the coins into a single area twice a week. It sucks up all that is found. There can be some bizarre and diverse objects.
Inside the fountain, we find everything. As you can imagine, by throwing the coin, anything can fall. We found bracelets, necklaces, and dentures. We found umbilical cords. We found a little bit of everything inside the fountain.
The entire operation is done in the presence of the Rome Municipal Police. The Caritas volunteer then takes the bags to a secret destination. A great number of activities are funded with the money collected from the Trevi Fountain, such as food banks, a youth center, a day center for Alzheimer patients, and the Caritas Medical Center.
We go on day by day. We are also counting on Providence in this respect. What interests us is that we know that they are used to promote the most diverse charitable activities.
Around half the money collected from the fountain is used to help poor families located in Rome.
A bit more than 50% is dedicated to supporting poor families from many different countries. I would like to say that if there is one thing that matches the tourists that come from so many countries in the world, it is that the people, the families that we help, really come from so many countries in the world.
The right way to go to the poor. So I think that's a transfer of the feeling from the people who are throwing them into the fountain, and then the journey is from their feeling towards the other people who are receiving that. That should be a nice journey.
A wish to see Rome again turned into a blessing for those in need.
People around the world are getting excited for the supermoon this month. You could already see it last night, but it's set to reach its full lunar phase tonight. In this time-lapse video, the supermoon is rising behind the Statue of Liberty here in New York. And in Indonesia's capital, crowds gathered to get a glimpse of the supermoon as it lit up the night sky. A supermoon happens when a full lunar phase syncs up with an especially close swing around the Earth. This usually happens only 3 or 4 times a year and consecutively. Tonight's supermoon is the third of 4 supermoons this year, and it's set to appear even bigger and brighter than the previous 2. It's also set to team up with a comet for rare stargazing.
Fall is settling in and pumpkin season is in full swing. The bright orange squash is always a symbol of Halloween, but it's not just humans who are indulging in these pumpkin treats. Animals at zoos are enjoying them too. A rhino family of 3 took delight in playfully squashing and munching on pumpkins at the Oregon Zoo in Portland to mark the beginning of the Halloween season. Footage shows the rhinos enthusiastically splitting open pumpkins, and the family's baby rhino energetically ran around enjoying bites of the pumpkin halves.
That's adorable. And a video taken at the Oakland Zoo last week shows a 30-year-old elephant, Osh, devouring a Halloween pumpkin snack in one bite. Her impressive feat showcases not only her size, but also her enthusiasm for seasonal treats.
And still staying in the animal kingdom, 2 rescued southern sea otters made their formal debut at the New York Aquarium today. The 2 female otters are rescued off the coast of California, and they were very young when they were rescued and deemed non-releasable. They were cared for at other locations of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums before arriving in New York, where they will now reside. Southern sea otters, also known as California sea otters, live on the coast of California, hence their name. Historically, they numbered in the hundreds of thousands in the North Pacific Ocean, but their numbers have plummeted in the early 1900s due to the fur trade. The United States Fish and Wildlife Service estimates that there are only around 3,000 that remain in the wild. And another fun fact about otters here, Carrie, did you know that they actually know how to use tools?
Tell me more, Fiona.
Yeah, they use rocks, and they can like break shells open because they eat like sea snails and mollusks or whatnot. And they also have favorite rocks. You know, they like to collect rocks, and they keep them in these little skin folds in their elbows. Very, very interesting.
You're a library of fun facts, Fiona, especially when it comes to animals. And the New York Aquarium has provided home for 11 rescued sea otters since 1991.
Thank goodness. I'm so glad they're helping those otters out.
Indeed.
So cute. Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom today.
Please join Tiffany Meyer later for the NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific. I'm Carrie Dunst.
And I am Fiona G. Have a great evening and see you tomorrow.